Chapter 6. I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. Once I got with the fact that my Latin teacher was a horse, we had a nice tour, though I was careful not to walk behind him. I had done Pooper Scooper patrol in the Marcy's Thanksgiving Day parade a few times, and I'm sorry I did not trust Kyron's back end the way I trusted his front. We passed the volleyball pit. Several of the campers nudged each other. One pointed to the Minotaur horn I was carrying. Another said, "That's him." Most of the campers were older than me. Their satire friends were bigger than Grover, all of them trotting around in orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirts with nothing else to cover their bare, shaggy hindquarters. I wasn't normally shy, but the way they stared at me made me uncomfortable. I felt like they were expecting me to do a flip or something. I looked back at the farmhouse. It was a lot bigger than I realized. 4 stories tall, sky blue, with white trim like an upscale seaside resort. I was checking out the brass eagle weather vane on top when something caught my eye. A shadow in the uppermost window at the attic gable. Something had moved the curtain just for a second, and I got the distinct impression I was being watched. "What's up there?" I asked Kyron. He looked where I was pointing, and his smile faded. "Just the attic." "Somebody lives there?" "No," he said with finality. "Not a single living thing." I got the feeling that he was being truthful, but I was also sure something had moved that curtain. "Come along, Percy," Kyron said, his light-hearted tone now a little forced. "There's a lot to see." We, we walked through the strawberry fields, where campers were picking bushels of berries like while a satyr played on a reed pipe. Karen told me the camp grew a nice crops for export to New York restaurants and Mount Olympus. "It pays our expenses," he explained, "and the strawberries take almost no effort." He said Mr. D had his effect on fruit-bearing plants. They just went crazy when he was around. It worked best with wine grapes, but Mr. D was restricted from growing those, so they grew strawberries instead. I watched the satyr playing his pipe. His music was causing lines of bugs to leave the strawberry patch in every direction like refugees fleeing a fire. I wondered if Grover could work that kind of magic with music. I wondered if he was still inside the farmhouse getting tuned out by Mr. D. "Grover won't get in too much trouble, will he?" I asked Kyron. "I mean, he was a good protector, really." Kyron sighed. He shed his tweed jacket and draped it over his horseback like a saddle. "Grover had big dreams, Percy, perhaps bigger than are reasonable. To reach his goal, he must first demonstrate great courage by succeeding as a keeper, finding a new camper and bringing him safely to Half-Blood Hill. But he did that." "I might agree with you," Karen said, "but it is not my place to judge. Dionysus and the Council of Cloven Elders must decide. I am afraid they might not see this assignment as a success. After all, Grover lost you in New York. Then there's the unfortunate, fate of your mom. And the fact that Grover was unconscious when you dragged him over the property line. The council might question whether this shows any courage on Grover's part." I wanted to protest. None of what happened was Grover's fault. I also felt really guilty. If I hadn't given Grover the slip at the bus station, he might not have gotten into trouble. "He'll get a second chance, won't he?" Karen winced. "I'm afraid that was Grover's second chance, Percy. The council was not anxious to give him another either after what happened the first time, 5 years ago. Olympus knows. I advised him to wait longer before trying again. He's still small for his age." "How old is he?" "Oh, 28. "What? And he's in 6th grade?" Satires mature half as fast as humans, Percy. Grover has been equivalent of a middle school student for the past 6 years. "That's horrible." Quite, Karen agreed. At any rate, Grover is a late bloomer, even by satire standards, and not yet very accomplished at woodland magic. Alas, he had he was anxious to pursue his dream. Perhaps now he will find some other career. That's not fair, I said. What happened the first time? Was it really so bad? Kyron looked away quickly. Let's move along, shall we? But I wasn't quite ready to let the subject drop. Something that occurred to me when Kyron talked about my mother's fate as if he were intentionally avoiding the word death. The beginnings of the idea, a tiny hopeful fire, started forming in my mind. Kyron, I said, if the gods in Olympus and all that are real, yes, child, does that mean the underworld is real too? Kyron's expression darkened. Yes, child. He paused as if choosing his words carefully. There is a place where spirits go after death. But for now, until we know more, I could urge you to put that out of your mind. What do you mean until we know more? Come on, Percy, let's see the woods. As we got closer, I realized how huge the forest was. It took up at least a quarter of the valley, with trees so tall and thick you could imagine nobody had been in there since the Native Americans. Kyron said, the woods are stocked if you care to try your luck, but go armed. Stocked with what? I asked. Armed with what? You'll see. Capture the flag is Friday night. Do you have your own sword and shield? My own. No, Karen said. I don't suppose you do. I think a size 5 will do. I'll visit the armory later. I wanted to ask what kind of summer camp had an armory, but there was too much else to think about. So the tour continued. We saw the archery range, the canoeing lake, the stables, which Kyron didn't seem to like very much, the javelin range, the sing-along amphitheater, and the arena where Kyron said they held sword and spear fights. Sword and spear fights? I asked. Cabin challenges and all that, he explained. Not lethal. Usually. Oh yes, and there's the mess hall. Kyron pointed to an outdoor pavilion framed in white Grecian columns on a hill overlooking the sea. There were a dozen stone picnic tables. No roof, no walls. What do you do when it rains? I asked. Kyron looked at me as if I had gone a little weird. We still have to eat, don't we? I decided to drop the subject. Finally, he showed me the cabins. There were 12 of them, nestled in the woods by the lake. They were arranged in a U-shaped, with 2 off the base and 5 in row on either side. And they were without doubt the most bizarre collection of buildings I'd ever seen. Except for the fact that each had a large brass number above the door, odds on the left side and evens on the right. They looked absolutely nothing alike. Number 9 had smoke tracks like a tiny factory. Number 4 had tomato vines on the walls and a roof made of real grass. 7 seemed to be made of solid gold, which gleamed so much in the sunlight it was almost impossible to look at. They all faced a commons arena about the size of a soccer field, dotted with Greek statues, fountains, flower beds, and a couple of basketball hoops, which were more my speed. In the center of the field was a huge stone-lined fire pit. Even though it was warm afternoon, the hearth smoldered. A girl about 9 years old was tending the flames, poking the coals with a stick. The pairs of cabin at the head of the field numbers 1 and 2, looking like his and hers mausoleums. Big white marble boxes with heavy columns in front. Cabin 1 was the biggest and bulkiest of the 12. Its polished bronze doors shimmered like a hologram, so that from different angles lightning bolts seemed to streak across them. Cabin 2 was more grateful somehow, with slimmer columns garlanded with pomegranates and flowers. The walls were carved with images of peacocks. Zeus and Hera, I guessed. Correct, Karen said. The cabins look empty. Several of the cabins are. That's true. Not even. No. No one ever stays in one or two. Okay. Each cabin had a different god, like a mascot. 12 cabins for 12 Olympians. But why would some be empty? I stopped in front of the first cabin on the left, cabin 3. I stopped in front of I stopped in front of the first cabin on the left, cabin 3. It wasn't high and mighty like cabin 1, but long and slow and solid. The outer walls were of rough grey stone, studded with the pieces of seashell and coral, as if slabs had been hewn straight from the bottom of the ocean floor. I peeked inside the open door, and Karen said, "Oh, I wouldn't do that." Before he could pull me back out, I caught the salty scent of the interior like the wind on the shore Montauk. The interior walls glowed like a balloon. There were 6 empty bunk beds with silk sheets turned down, but there was no sign anyone had ever slept there. The place felt so sad and lonely. I was glad when Kyron put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Come along, Percy." Most of the other cabins were crowded with campers. Number 5 was bright red, a real nasty paint job, as if the color had been splashed on with buckets and fists. The roof was lined with barbed wires. A stuffed wild boar's head hung over the door, and its eyes seemed to follow me inside. Me. Inside, I could see a bunch of mean looking kids, both girls and boys, arm wrestling and arguing with each other while rock music blared. The loudest was a girl, maybe 13 or 14. She wore a size extra large Camp Havla t shirt under a camouflage jacket. She zeroed in on me and gave me an evil sneer. She reminded me of Nancy Buffett, though the camper girl was much bigger and tougher looking, and her hair was long and stringy and brown instead of red. I kept walking, trying to stay clear of Kyron's hooves. "We haven't seen any other centaurs," I observed. "No," said Kyron sadly. "My kinsmen are wild and barbaric folk. I am afraid you might encounter them in the wilderness or at major sporting events. But you won't see any here." "You said your name is Kyron. Are you really?" He smiled down at me. "The Kyron. From the stories? Trainer of Hercules and all that?" "Yes, Percy, I am." "But shouldn't you be dead?" Kyron paused as if the question intrigued him. "I honestly don't know about should be. The truth is, I can't be dead. You see, eons ago, the gods granted my wish. I could continue the work I loved. I could be a teacher of heroes as long as humanity needed me. I gained much from that wish. That I gave up much. But I'm still here, so I can only assume I'm still needed. I thought about being a teacher for 3,000 years. It wouldn't have made my top 10 things to wish for list. Doesn't it ever get boring?" "No, no," he said. "Horribly depressing at times, but never boring." "Why depressing?" Kyron seemed to turn hard of hearing again. "Oh, look," he said. "Annabeth is waiting for us." The blonde girl I had met at the big house was reading a book in front of the last cabin on the left, number 11. When we reached her, she looked me over critically like she was still thinking about how much I'd ruled. I tried to see what she was reading, but I couldn't make out the title. I thought my dyslexia was acting up. Then I realized the tilt wasn't even English. The letters looked Greek to me. I mean, literally Greek. There were pictures of temples and statues, and different kinds of columns like those in architecture books. "Annabeth," Karen said, "I have master's archery class at noon. Would you take Percy from here?" "Yes, sir." "Cabin 11, Karen told me, gesturing toward the doorway. "Make yourself at home." Out of all the cabins, 11 looked the most like a regular old summer camp cabin with the emphasis on old. The threshold was worn down, The brown paint peeling over the doorway was one of those doctor symbols, a winged pole with two snakes wrapped around it. What did they call it? A caduceus. Inside it was packed with people, both boys and girls, way more than the number of bunk beds. Sleeping bags were spread all over the floor. It looked like a gym where my Red Cross and set up evacuation center. Karen didn't go in. The door was too low for him. But when the campers saw him, they all stood and bowed respectfully. Well then, Karen said. Good luck, Percy. I'll see you at dinner. He galloped away towards the archery range. I stood in the doorway, looking at the kids. They weren't bowing anymore. They were staring at me, sizing me up. I knew this routine. I'd gone through it at enough schools. Well, Annabeth prompted. Go on. So naturally I tripped coming in the door and made a total fool of myself. There were some snickers from the campers, but none of them said anything. Annabeth announced, Percy Jackson, meet came in 11. Regular or undetermined? Somebody asked. I don't know what to say, but Annabeth said, undetermined. Everybody groaned. A guy who was a little older than the rest came forward. Now, campers, that's what we are here for. Welcome, Percy. You can have the spot on the floor right over there. The guy was about 19, and he looked pretty cool. He was tall and muscular, with short cropped sandy hair and a friendly smile. He wore an orange tank top, cut off sandals, and a leather necklace with 5 different colored clay bands. The only thing unsettling about his appearance was a thick white scar that ran from beneath his right eye to his jaw, like an old knife slash. This is Luke. This is Luke, Annabeth said, and her voice sounded different somehow. I glanced over and could have sworn, sworn she was blushing. She saw me looking and her expression hardened again. He's your counselor for now. For now? I asked. You're undetermined, Luke explained patiently. They don't know what cabin to put you in. So you're here. Cabin 11 takes all newcomers, all visitors. Naturally, we would. Hermes, our patron, is the god of travelers. I looked at the tiny section of floor they had given me. I had nothing to put there to mark it as my own. No luggage, no clothes, no sleeping bag. Just the Minotaur's horn. I thought about setting that down. Then I remembered that Hermes was also the god of thieves. I looked around the campus face, some sullen and some suspicious, some grinning stupidly, some eyeing me as if they were waiting for a chance to pick my pockets. How long will I be here? I asked. Good question, Luke asked. Until you're determined? How long will that take? The campus all laughed. Come on, Annabeth told me. I'll show you the volleyball court. I've already seen it. Come on. She grabbed my wrist and dragged me outside. I could hear the kids of cabin 11 laughing behind me. When we were a few feet away, Annabeth said, Jackson, you have to be better than that. What? She rolled her eyes and mumbled under her breath. I can't believe I thought you were the one. What's your problem? I was getting angry now. All I know is I killed some bull guy. Don't talk like that, Annabeth told me. You know how many kids at this camp wish they had your chance? To get killed? To fight the Minotaur? What do you think we train for? I shook my head. Look, if the thing I fought really was the Minotaur, the same one in the stories, yes. Then there's only one. Yes. And he died like a gazillion years ago, right? Theseus killed him in the labyrinth. So, monsters don't die, Percy. They can be killed. But they don't die. Oh, thanks. That clears it up. They don't have souls like you and me. You can dispel them for a while, but maybe for a whole lifetime if you're lucky. But they are primal forces. Kyron calls them archetypes. Eventually, they reform. I thought about Mr. Dodds. You mean if I killed one accidentally with the sword? The few. I mean your math teacher. That's right. She's still out there. You just made her very, very mad. How do you know about Mr. Dodds? You talk in your sleep. You almost called her something. A fury? They are Hades' torturers, right? Annabeth glanced nervously at the ground as if she expected it to open up and swallow her. You shouldn't call them by names, even here. We call them the kindly ones, if we have to speak of them at all. Look, is there anything we can say without it thundering? I sounded whiny even to myself, but right then I didn't care. Why do I have to stay in cabin 11 anyway? Why is everybody so crowded together? There are plenty of empty bunks right over there. I pointed to the first few cabins, and Annabeth turned pale. You don't just choose your cabin, Percy. It depends on who your parents are, or your parent. She stared at me, waiting for me to get it. My mom is Sally Jackson, I said. She works at the candy store in Grand Central Station. At least she used to. I'm sorry about your mom, Percy, but that's not what I mean. I'm talking about your other parent, your dad. He's dead. I never knew him. Annabeth sighed. Clearly, she had had this conversation before with other kids. You, your father's not dead, Percy. How can you say? How can you say that? You know him? No, of course not. Then how can you say? Because I know you. You wouldn't be here if you weren't one of us. You don't know anything about me. No? She raised an eyebrow. I bet you moved around from school to school. I bet you were kicked out of a lot of them. How? Diagnosed with dyslexia? Probably ADHD too? I tried to swallow my embarrassment. What does that have to do with anything? Taken together, it's almost a search sign. The letters floated off the pages when you read, right? And because your mind is hardwired for ancient Greek, and the ADHD, you're impulsive, can't sit still in the classroom. That's your battlefield reflexes. In a real fight, they'd keep you alive. As for the attention problems, that's because you see too much, Percy, not too little. Your senses are better than a regular mortal's. Of course, the teachers want you to be medicated. Most of them are monsters. They don't want you seeing them for what they are. You sound like you went through the same thing. Most of the kids here did. If you weren't like us, you wouldn't have survived the Minotaur, much less the ambrosia and nectar. Ambrosia and nectar? The food and drink we were giving you to make you better. The stuff would have killed a normal kid. It would have turned your blood to fire and your bones to sand, and you'd be dead. Face it, you are a half-blood. A half-blood. I was reeling with so many questions, I didn't know where to start. Then a husky voice yelled, Well, a newbie. I looked over. The girl from the ugly red cabin was sauntering towards us. She had 3 other girls behind her, all big and ugly and mean looking like her, all wearing camo jackets. Clarice, Annabeth sighed. Why don't you go polish your spear or something? Sure, Miss Princess, the girl said. So I can run you through with it Friday night? It is a correct kiss, Annabeth said, which I somehow understood was Greek for go to the crows, though I had a feeling it was worse curse than it sounded. You don't stand chance. We'll pulverize you, Clarice said, but her eye twitched because she hadn't sure she'd followed through on the threat. She turned toward me. Who's this little runt? Percy Jackson, Annabeth said. Meet Clarice, daughter of Ares. I blinked. Like, as in the war god? Clarice sneered. You got a problem with that? No, I said, recovering my wits. It explains the bad smell. Clarice growled. You got an initiation ceremony for newbies, Percy. Whatever. Come on, I'll show you. Clarice, Annabeth tried to say. Stay out of it, wise girl. Annabeth looked pained, but she did stay out of it, and I didn't really want her help. I was the new kid. I had to earn my own rep. I handed Annabeth my minotaur horn and got ready to fight. But before I knew it, Clarice had me by the neck and was dragging me towards a cinder block building that I knew immediately was the bathroom. I was kicking and punching. I'd been in plenty of fights before, but this big girl Clarice had hands like iron. She dragged me into the girls' bathroom. There was a line of toilets on one side and a line of shower stalls down the other. It smelled just like any public bathroom, and I was thinking as much as I could think with Clarice ripping my hair out that if this place belonged to the gods, they should have been offered classier Johns. Clarice's friends were all laughing, and I was trying to find the strength I'd used to fight the Minotaur, but it just wasn't there. Like he's big three material, Clarice said as she pushed me towards one of the toilets. Yeah, right, Minotaur. Probably fell over laughing. He was so stupid looking. Her friend snickered. Annabeth stood in the corner, watching through her fingers. Clarice bent me over on my knees and started pushing my head towards the toilet bowl. It reeked like rusted pipes, and well, like what goes into toilets. I strained to keep my head up. I was looking at the scummy water, thinking, I will not go into that. I won't. Then something happened. I felt a tug in the pit of my stomach. I heard the plumbing mumble, the pipes shudder. Clarice's grips on my hair loosened. Water shot out of the toilet, making an arc straight over my head. And the next thing I knew, I was sprawled on the bathroom toilets with Clarice screaming behind me. I turned I turned just as water blasted out of the toilet again, hitting Clarice right straight in the face. So hard it pushed her down onto her butt. The water stayed on her like the spray from a fire hose, pushing her backward into a shower stall. She struggled, gasping, and her friends started coming toward her. But then the other toilets exploded too, and six more streams of toilet water blasted them back. The showers acted up too, and together all the fixtures sprayed the camouflage girls right out of the bathroom, spinning them around like pieces of garbage being washed away. As soon as they were out the door, I felt the tug in the gut lessen, and the water shut off as quickly as it had started. The entire bathroom was flooded. Annabeth hadn't been spared. She was dripping wet, but she hadn't been pushed out the door. She was standing in exactly the same place, staring at me in shock. I looked down and realized I was sitting in only dry spot in the whole room. There was a circle of dry floor around me. I didn't have one drop of water on my clothes. Nothing. I stood up, my legs shaky. Annabeth said, How did you? I don't know. We walked to the door outside. Clarice and her friends were sprawled in the mud, and a bunch of other campers had gathered around to gawk. Clarice's hair was flattened across her face. Her camouflage jacket was sopping, and she smelled like sewage. She gave me a look of absolutely hatred. You are dead, new boy. You're totally dead. I probably should have let it go, but I said, You want to gargle with toilet water again, Clarice? Close your mouth. Her friends had to hold her back. They dragged her toward cabin 5 until the other campers made their way, avoiding the flailing feet. Annabeth stared at me. I couldn't tell whether she was just grossed out or angry at me for dousing her. What? I demanded. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, she said, that I want you to be on my team for the capture flag. Chapter 7. My dinner goes up in smoke. Word of the bathroom incident spread immediately. Wherever I went, campers pointed at me and murmured something about toilet water. Or maybe they were just staring at Annabeth, who was still pretty much dripping wet. She showed me a few more places: the metal shop, where kids were forging their own swords, the art and craft room, where satyrs
were sandblasting the giant marble statue of a goat man, and the climbing wall, which actually consisted of two facing walls that shook violently, dropped boulders, sprayed lava, and clashed together if you didn't get to the top fast enough. Finally, we returned to the canoe lake where the trail led back to the cabins. I've got training to do, Annabeth said flatly. Dinner's at 7:30. Just follow your cabin to the mess hall. Annabeth, I'm sorry about the toilets. Whatever. It wasn't my fault. She looked at me skeptically, and I realized it was my fault. I'd made water shoot out of the bathroom fixtures. I didn't understand how, but the toilets had responded to me. I had become one with the plumbing. You need to talk to the oracle, Annabeth said. Who? Not who. What? The oracle. I'll ask Kyron. I stared into the lake, wishing somebody would give me a straight answer for once. I wasn't expecting anybody to be looking back at me from the bottom, so my heart skipped a beat when I noticed two teenage girls sitting cross-legged at the base of the pier, about 20 feet below. They wore blue jeans and shimmering green t-shirts, and their brown hair floated loose around their shoulders as minnows darted in and out. They smiled and waved as if I were a long lost friend. I didn't know what else to do. I waved back. Don't encourage them, Annabeth warned. Nights are terrible flirts. Nights? I repeated, feeling completely overwhelmed. That's it. I want to go home now. Annabeth frowned. Don't you get it, Percy? You are home. This is the only safe place on earth for kids like us. You mean mentally disturbed kids? I mean not human. Not totally human anyway. Half human. Half and half what? I think you know. I didn't want to admit, but I was afraid I did. I felt a tingling in my limbs, a sensation I sometimes felt when my mom talked about my dad. God, I said, half God. Annabeth nodded. Your father isn't dead. Your father isn't dead, Percy. He's one of the Olympians. That's crazy. Is it? What's the most common thing gods did in the old stories? They ran around falling in love with humans and having kids with them. Do you think they have changed their habits in the last few millennia? But those are just... I almost said myths again. Then I remembered Chiron warning that in 2000 years I might be considered a myth. But if all the kids here are half gods, demigods, Annabeth said. That's the official terms. Or half-bloods. Then who's your dad? Her hands tightened around the pier railing. I got the feeling I had just trespassed on a sensitive subject. My dad's a professor at West Point, she said. I haven't seen him since I was very small. He teaches American history. He's a human? What? You assume it has to be a male god who finds a human female attractive? How sexist is that? Who's your mom then? Cabin 6. Meaning? Annabeth straightened. Athena, goddess of wisdom and battle. Okay, I thought. Why not? And then my dad? Underdetermined, Annabeth said. Like I told you before, nobody knows. Except my mother. She knew. Maybe not, Percy. Gods don't always reveal their identities. My dad would have. He loved her. Annabeth gave me a cautious look. She didn't want to burst my bubble. Maybe you are right. But he'll send a sign. That's the only way to know for sure. Your father has to send you a sign claiming you as his son. Sometimes it happens. You mean sometimes it doesn't? Annabeth ran her palm along the rail. The gods are busy. They have a lot of kids and they don't always, well, sometimes they don't care about us, Percy. They ignore us. I thought about some of the kids I'd seen in the Hermes cabin. Teenagers who looked sullen and depressed, as if they were waiting for a call that would never come. I'd known kids like that at Yancey Academy, shuffled off a boarding school by rich parents who didn't have time to deal with them. But gods should behave better. So I'm stuck here. I said. That's it? For the rest of my life? It depends, Annabeth said. Some campers only stay the summer. If you are a child of Aphrodite or Demeter, you're probably not a real powerful force. The monsters might ignore you, so you can get by with a few months of summer training and live in the mortal world the rest of the year. But for some of us, it's too dangerous to leave. We are year rounders. In the mortal world, we attract monsters. They sense us. They come to challenge us. Most of the time, they'll ignore us until we are old enough to cause trouble. About 10 or 11 years old, but after that, most demigods either make their way here or they get killed off. A few manage to survive in the outside world and become famous. Believe me, if I told you the names, you'd know some of them. Some don't even realize they are demigods, but very, very few are like that. So monsters can't get in here. Annabeth shook her head. Not unless they are intentionally stalked in the woods or specially summoned by someone on the inside. Why would anybody want to summon a monster? Practice fight? Practical jokes? Practical jokes? The point is, the borders are sealed to keep mortals and monsters out. From the outside, mortals look in the valley and see nothing unusual, just a strawberry farm. So, you're a year rounder? Annabeth nodded. From under the collar of her t shirt, she pulled a leather necklace with 5 clay beads of different colors. It was just like the Luke's necklace, except Annabeth also had a big gold ring strung on it, like a college ring. I've been here since I was 7, Annabeth said. Every August, on the last day of summer sessions, you get a bead for surviving another year. I've been here longer than most of the counselors, and they are all in college. Why did you come so young? She twisted her ring on her necklace. None of your business. Oh, I stood there for a minute in uncomfortable silence. So, I could just walk out of here right now if I wanted to. It would be suicide, but you could with Mr. D's or Kyron's permissions. But they wouldn't let but they wouldn't give permissions until the end of the summer sessions. Unless unless you gra- unless you were granted a quest. But that hardly ever happens. The last time her voice trailed off. I could tell from her tone that the last time hadn't gone well. Back in the sick room, I said, when you were feeding me that stuff. Ambrosia. Yeah, you asked me something about the summer solstice. Annabeth's shoulders tensed. So, you do know something? Well, no. Back at my old school, I overheard Grover and Kyron talking about it. Grover mentioned the solstice. He said something like we didn't have much time because of the deadline. What did that mean? She clenched her fists. I wish I knew. Kyron and the satires, they know, but they won't tell me. Something is wrong in Olympus. Something pretty major. Last time I was there, everything seemed so normal. You've been to Olympus? Some of some of us year-rounders, Luke and Clarice and I and a few others, we took a field trip during winter solstice. That's when the gods have their big annual council. But how did you get there? The Long Island Trade Road? Of course. But you get off at Penn Station, Empire State Building's special elevator to the 600th floor. She looked at me like she was sure I must know this already. You are a New Yorker, right? Oh, sure. As far as I knew, there was only 102 floors in the Empire State Building, but I decided not to point that out. Right after we visited, Annabeth continued, the weather got weird, as if the gods had started fighting. A couple of times since, I've overheard satires talking. The best I can figure out is that something important was stolen, as if it returned by summer solstice. There's going to be trouble. When you come, I was hoping. I mean, Athena can get along with about anybody, except for Ares. And of course, she's got the rivalry with Poseidon. But I mean, aside from that, I thought we could work together. I thought you might know something. I shook my head. I thought I could help her, but I felt too hungry and tired and mentally overloaded to ask any more questions. I've got to get a quest, Annabeth muttered to herself. I'm not too young. If they could just tell me the problem. I could smell barbecue smoke coming from somewhere nearby. Annabeth must have heard my stomach growl. She told me to go on. She'd catch me later. I left her on the pier, tracing her finger across the rail as if drawing a battle plan. Back at cabin 11, everybody was talking and horsing around, waiting for dinner. For the first time, I noticed that a lot of campers had similar features: sharp noses, upturned eyebrows, mischievous smiles. They were the kind of kids the teachers could peg at as troublemakers. Thankfully, nobody paid much attention to me as I walked over to my spot on the floor and plopped down with the minor horn, with the Minotaur horn. The counselor, Luke, came over. He had the Hermes family resemblance, too. It was marred by the scar of his right on his right cheek, but his smile was intact. Found your sleeping bag, he said. In here, I stole you some toiletries from the camp store. I couldn't tell if he was kidding about the stealing part. I said, thanks. No prob. Luke sat next to me, pushed his back against the wall. Tough first day? I don't belong here, I said. I don't even believe in gods. Yeah, he said. That's how we all started. Once you start believing in them, it doesn't get any easier. The bitterness in his voice surprised me because Luke seemed like a pretty easygoing guy. He looked like he could handle just about anything. So, your dad is Hermes? I asked. He pulled a switchblade out of his back pocket, and for a second I thought he was going to gut me, but he just scraped the mud off the sole of his sandal. Yeah, Hermes. The wing-footed messenger guy? That's him. Messengers, medicines, travelers, merchants, thieves. Anybody who used the roads, that's why you're here, enjoying Cabin 11's hospitality. Hermes isn't picky about who he sponsors. I figured Luke didn't mean to call me nobody. He just had a lot on his mind. You ever meet your dad? I asked. Once, he said. I waited thinking that if he wanted to tell me, he'd tell me. Apparently, he didn't. I wondered if the story had anything to do with how he got his car. He looked up at me and managed a smile. Don't worry about it, Percy. The campers here, they're mostly good people. After all, we're extended family, right? We take care of each other. He seemed to understand how I felt, and I was grateful for that. Because an older guy like him, even if he was a counselor, should have steered clear of an uncool middle schooler like me. But Luke had welcomed me into the cabin. He had even stolen me some toiletries, which was the nicest thing anybody had done for me all day. I decided to ask him my last big question, from the one that had been bothering me all afternoon. Clarice, from Aries, was joking about me being Big Three material. Then Annabeth. Twice, she said I might be the one. She said I should talk to the oracle. What was all that about? Luke folded his knife. I hate prophecies. What do you mean? His face twitched around the scar. Let's just say I messed things up for everybody else. The last 2 years, ever since my trip into the garden of the Hesperides went sour, Chiron hasn't allowed any more quests. Annabeth's been trying to get out into the world. She pestered Chiron so much, he finally told her he already knew her fate. He had a prophecy from the oracle. He couldn't tell her the whole thing, but he said Annabeth wasn't destined to go on a quest yet. She was to wait until somebody special came to the camp. Somebody special? Don't worry about it, kid, Luke said. Annabeth wants to think every new camper who comes through here is the omen she's been waiting for. Now come on, it's time. It's dinner time. The moment he said it, a horn blew in the distance. Somehow, I knew it was a conch shell, even though I'd never heard it before. Luke yelled, 11, fall in line! The whole cabin, about 20 of us, filled into the common yard. We lined up in order of seniority. So, of course, I was dead last. Campers came from the other cabins too, except for the last three empty cabins at the end, and cabin 8, which had looked normal in the daytime but was now starting to glow silver at the sun as the sun went down. We marched up the hill to the mess hall pavilion. Satyrs joined us from the meadow. Naiads emerged from the canoe. A few other girls came out of the woods. And then, I say out of the woods, I mean straight out of the woods. I saw one girl, about 9 or 10 years old, melt from the side of a maple tree and come skipping up the hill. In all, there were maybe 100 campers, a few dozen satyrs, and a dozen assorted wood nymphs and naiads. In all pavilion, torches blazed around the marble columns. A central fire burned in a bronze brazier the size of a bathtub. Each cabin had its own table covered in white cloth, trimmed in purple. Four of the tables were empty, but cabin 11's was way overcrowded. Four of the table I had to squeeze on the edge of a bench with half my butt hanging off. I saw Grover sitting at table 12 with Mr. D, a few satyrs, and a couple of plump blonde boys who looked just like Mr. D. Karen stood to one side, the picnic table being way too small for a centaur. Annabeth sat at table 6 with a bunch of serious looking athletic kids, all with her grey eyes and honey blonde hair. Clarice sat behind me at the Aries table. She had apparently gotten over being host down because she was laughing and belching right alongside her friends. Finally, Kyron pounded his hoof against the marble floor of the pavilion, and everybody fell silent. He raised a glass. To the gods! Everybody else raised their glasses. To the gods! Wood nymphs came forward with platters of food. Grapes, apples, strawberries, cheese, fresh bread, and yes, barbecue. My glass was empty, but Luke said, Speak to it. Whatever you want. Non-alcoholic, of course. I said, Cherry Coke. The glass filled with sparkling caramel liquid. Then I had an idea. Blue cherry Coke. The soda turned into a violent shade of cobalt. I took a cautious sip. Perfect. I drank a toast to my mother. She's not gone, I told myself. Not permanently anyway. She's in the underworld, and if that's a real place, then someday. Here you go, Percy, Luke said, handing me a platter of smoked biscuit. I loaded my plate and was about to take a big bite when I noticed everyone getting up, carrying their plates towards the fire in the center of the pavilion. I wondered if they were going for dessert or something. Come on, Luke told me. As I got closer, I saw that everyone was taking a portion of their meal and dropping it into the fire. The ripest strawberries, the juiciest slice of beef, and the warmest, most buttery roll. Luke murmured in my ear, burnt offerings for the gods. They liked the smell. You are kidding. His look warned me not to take this lightly, but I couldn't help wondering why an immortal, all-powerful being would like the smell of burning food. Luke approaches the fire, bore his head, and tossed in a cluster of fat red grapes. Hermes. I was next. I wished I knew the god's name to say. Finally, I made a silent plea. Whoever you are, tell me, please. I scraped a big slice of brisket into the flames, which I caught a whiff of the smoke. When I caught a whiff of the smoke, I didn't gag. It smelled nothing like burnt food. It smelled of hot chocolate and fresh baked brownies, hamburgers on the grill, and wildflowers, and 100 other good things that should have gone well together. But did. Shouldn't have gone well together, but did. I could almost believe the gods could live off the smoke. When everybody had returned to their seats and finished eating their meals, Karen pounded his hoof again for our attention. Mr. D got up with a huge sigh. Yes, I suppose I'd better say hello to all you brats. Well, hello. Our activities director, Karen, says the next capture the flag is Friday. Cabin 5 presents presently holds the laurels. A bunch of ugly cheering rose from the airy stable. Personally, Mr. D continued, I couldn't care less, but congratulations. Also, I should tell you that we have a new camper today, Peter Johnson. Karen murmured something. Eh, Percy Jackson, Mr. D corrected. That's right. Hooray! And all that. Now run along to your silly campfire. Go on. Everybody cheered. We all headed down toward the amphitheater, where Apollo's cabin led a sing along. We sang camp songs about the gods and ate s'mores and joked around. And the funny thing was, I didn't feel that anyone was staring at me anymore. I felt that I was home. Later in the evening, when the sparks from the campfire were curling in a starry sky, the conch horn blew again, and we all filed back to our cabins. I didn't realize how exhausted I was until I collapsed on my borrowed sleeping bag. My fingers curled around the Minotaur's horn. I thought about my mom, but I had good thoughts. Her smile, the bedtime stories she would read me when I was a kid, the way she would tell me not to let the bed bugs bite. Then I closed my eyes. I fell asleep instantly. That was my first day at Camp Half-Blood. I wish I'd know how briefly I would get to enjoy my new home. Chapter 8. We Capture a Flag. The next few days I settled into a routine that felt almost normal, if you don't count the fact that I was getting lessons from satyrs, nymphs, and a centaur. Each morning I took ancient Greek from Annabeth, and we talked about the gods and goddesses in the present tense, which was kind of weird. I discovered Annabeth was right about my dyslexia. Ancient Greek wasn't that hard for me to read, at least no harder than English. After a couple of mornings, I could stumble through a few lines of Homer without too much headache. The rest of the day, I'd rotate through outdoor activities, looking for something I was good at. Kyron tried to teach me archery, but we found out pretty quick it wasn't any good with a bow and arrow. He didn't complain, even when he had to snag a stray arrow out of his tail. Foot racing? No good either. The wood nymph instructor left me in the dust. They told me not to worry about it. They had had centuries of practice running away from lovesick gods. But still, it was a little humiliation to be slower than a tree. And wrestling? Forget it. Every time I got on the mat, Clarice would pulverize me. There's there's more where that came from, punk, she'd mumble in my ear. The only thing I really excelled at was canoeing, and that wasn't kind of heroic skill people expected to see from the kid who had beaten the Minotaur. I knew the senior campers and counselors were watching me, trying to decide who my dad was, but they weren't having an easy time. It wasn't so I wasn't as strong as the Aries kid, or as good at archery as the Apollo kids. I didn't have Hephaestus' skill with metalwork, or God's forbid, Dionysus' way with wine plants. Luke told me I might be a child of Hermes, a kind of jack of all trades, master of one. But I got the feeling he was just trying to make me feel better. He really didn't know what to make of me either. Despite all that, I liked camp. I got used to the morning fog over the beach and the smell of hot strawberry fields in the afternoon, even the weird noises of monsters in the woods at night. I would eat dinner with Cabin 11, scrape part of my meal into the fire, and try to feel some connection to my real dad. Nothing came, just the warm feeling I'd always had, like the memory of his smile. I tried not to think too much about my mom, but I kept wondering if gods and monsters were real. If all this magical stuff was possible, surely there was some way to save her, to bring her back. I started to understand Luke's bitterness and how he seemed to resent his father, Hermes. So, okay, maybe gods had important things to do, but couldn't they call once in a while or thunder or something? Dionysus could make Diet Coke appear out of thin air. Why couldn't my dad, whoever he was, make a phone appear? Thursday afternoon, 3 days after I arrived at Camp Half-Blood, I had my first sword fighting lesson. Everybody from Cabin 11 gathered in the big circular arena where Luke would be our instructor. We started with basic stabbing and slashing using some stuffed dummies in Greek armor. I guess I did okay. At least I understood what I was supposed to do and my reflexes were good. The problem was I couldn't find a blade that felt right in my hands. Either they were too heavy or too light or too long. Luke tried his best to fix me up, but he agreed that none of the practice blades seemed to work for me. We moved on a dueling in pair. Luke announced he would be my partner since this was my first time. Good luck, one of the campers told me. Luke's the best swordsman in the last 300 years. Maybe he'll go easy on me, I said. The campus nodded. Luke showed Luke showed me thrusts and parries and shield blocks the hard way. With every swipe, I got a little more battered and bruised. Keep your guard up, Percy, he said, then whapped me in the ribs like the flat of his blade. No, not that far up. Whap. Lunge. Whap. Now back. Whap. By the time he called a break, I was soaked in sweat. Everybody swarmed the drink coolers. Luke poured ice water on his head, which looked like a good idea. I did the same. Instantly, I felt better. Strength surged back into my arms. The sword didn't feel so awkward. Okay, everybody, circle up, Luke ordered. If Percy doesn't mind, I want to give you a little demo. Great, I thought. Let's all watch Percy get pounded. The Hermes guys gathered around. They were suppressing smiles. I figured they had been in my shoes before and couldn't wait to see how Luke used me for punching back. He told everybody he was going to demonstrate a disarming technique, how to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your own sword so that he had no choice but to drop his own weapon. This is difficult, he stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Percy now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on me in slow motion. Sure enough, the sword clattered out of my hand. Now, in real time, he said, after I'd retrieved my weapon. We keep sparring until one of us pulls it off. Ready, Percy? I nodded, and Luke came after me. Somehow, I kept him from getting a shot at my hilt of his sword. My senses opened up. I saw his attacks coming. I countered. I stepped forward and tried to thrust out my own. Luke deflected it easily, but I saw a change in his face. His eyes narrowed, and he started to press me with more force. The sword grew heavy in my hand. The balance wasn't right. I knew it was only a matter of seconds before Luke took me down. So I figured, what the heck. I tried the disarming maneuver. The blade hit the base of Luke's and I twisted, putting my whole weight into a downward thrust. Cling! Luke's sword rattled against the stones. The tip of my blade was an inch away from his undefended chest. The other campers were silent. I lowered my sword. Sorry. For a moment, Luke was too stunned to speak. Sorry? His scarred face broke into a grin. But by the gods, Percy, why are you sorry? Show me that again. I didn't want to. The short burst of magic energy had completely abandoned me, but Luke insisted. This time, there was no contest. The moment our swords connected, Luke hit my hilt and sent my weapon skidding across the floor. After a long pause, somebody in the audience said, Beginner's luck. Luke wiped the chest off his brow. He appraised at me with an entirely new interest. Maybe, he said. But I wonder what Percy could do with a balanced sword. Friday afternoon. I was sitting with Grover at the lake, resting from a near-death experience on the climbing wall. Grover had scampered to the top like a mountain goat, but the lava had almost gotten me. My shirt had smoking holes in it. The hairs had been singed off my forearm. We sat on the pier watching the naiads go underwater. Underwater basket weaving until I got the nerve to ask Grover how this conversation with Mr. D had gone. His face turned a sickly shade of yellow. Fine, he said. Just great. So your career is still on track? He glanced at me nervously. Kyron told you I want a surgeon's license? Well, no. I had an I had no idea what a searcher's license was, but it didn't seem like the right time to ask him. He just said he just said you had big plans, and that you need credit for completing a keeper's assignment. So you so did you get it? Grover looked down at the Nayans. Mr. D suspended judgment. He said I hadn't failed or succeeded with you yet, so our fates were still tied together. If you got a quest and I went along to protect you, and we both came back alive, then maybe he'd consider the job complete. My spirits lifted. Well, that's not so bad, right? Blah. He might as well have transferred me to stable cleaning duty. The chances of you getting a quest, and even if you did, why would you want me along? Of course I'd want you along. Grover stared glumly into the water. Basket weaving? Must be nice to have useful skill. I tried to reassure him that he had lots of talents, but that just made him look more miserable. We talked about canoeing and swords play for a while. We talked about canoeing and swords play for a while, then debated the pros and cons of different gods. Finally, I asked him about the four empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, belongs to Artemis, he said. She vowed to be a maiden forever, so of course, no kids. The cabin is, honorary. Honorary. If she didn't have one, she'd be mad. Yeah, okay. But the ones at the end, are those big three? Grover tensed. We were getting close to a touchy subject. No, one of them, number 2, is Hera's, he said. That's another, honorary thing. She's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. When we say big three, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the sons of Kronos. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades? Yeah. After the great battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad and drew lots of decide who got what. Zeus got the sky, I remembered, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. Uh-huh. But Hades doesn't have a cabin here. No, he doesn't have a throne on Olympus either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. If he did have a cabin here, Grover shuddered. Well, it wouldn't be pleasant. Let's leave it at that. But Zeus and Poseidon, they both had like a bazillion kids in the myths. Why are their cabins empty? Grover shifted his hooves uncomfortably. About 60 years ago, after World War II, the big three agreed they wouldn't sire any more heroes. Their children were just too powerful. They were affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much carnage. World War II, that was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath with them, no more affairs with more. They all swore on the river Styx. Thunder boomed. I said, "That's the most serious oath you can make." Grover nodded. And the brothers kept their word? No kids. Grover's face darkened. 17 years ago, Zeus fell off the wagon. There was this TV starlet with the big fluffy 80s hairdo. He just couldn't help himself. When their child was born, a little girl named Talia. Well, the river Styx is serious about promises. Zeus himself got off easy because he's immortal, but he brought a terrible fate on his daughter. But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. Grover hesitated. Percy, children of the big three have powers greater than other half-bloods. They have a strong aura, a scent that attracts monsters. When Hades found out about the girl, he wasn't too happy about Zeus breaking his oath. Hades let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torment Talia. A satyr was assigned to be her keeper when she was 12, but there was nothing he could do. He tried to escort her with a couple of other half-bloods. she had befriended. They almost made it. They got all the way to the top of the hill. He pointed across to the valley, to the pine tree where I had fought the Minotaur. All three kindly ones were after them, along with a herd of hellhounds. They were about to be overrun when Talia told her satyr to take the other two half-bloods to safety, while she held off the monsters. She was wounded and tired, and she didn't want to live like a hunted animal. The satyr didn't want to leave her, but he couldn't manage her mind, couldn't change her mind, and he had to protect the others. So Talia made her final stand alone on the top of the hill as she died. Zeus took pity on her. He turned her into the pine tree. Her spirit still helps to protect the borders of the valley. That's why this hill is called Half Blood Hill. I stared at the pine in the distance. The story made me feel hollow and guilty too. A girl my age had sacrificed herself to save her friends. She had faced a whole army of monsters. Next to that, my victory over the Minotaur didn't seem like much. I wondered if I had acted differently. Could I have saved my mother? Grover, I said, have heroes really gone on quests to the underworld? Sometimes, he said. Orpheus, Hercules, Houdini. And have they ever returned? Somebody from the dead? No, never. Orpheus came close. Percy, you're not seriously thinking? No, I lied. I was just wondering. So, a satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod? Grover studied me warily. I didn't persuade. I hadn't persuaded him that I'd really dropped the underworld idea. Not always. We go undercover to a lot of schools. We try to sniff out half-bloods who have the makings of great heroes. If we find one with a strong aura, like a child of Big Three, we alert Chiron. He tries to keep an eye on them since they could cause really huge problems. And you found me. Chiron said you thought I might be something special. Grover looked as if I'd led him into a trap. I didn't. Oh, listen, don't think like that. If you were, you know, you'd never ever be allowed a quest, and I'd never get my license. You're probably a child of Hermes, or maybe it's even one of the minor gods like Nemesis, the god of revenge. Don't worry, okay? I got the idea he was reassuring himself more than me. The night after dinner, there was a lot more excitement than usual. At last, it was time for Capture the Flag. When the plates were cleared away, the conch horn sounded, and we all stood at our tables. Campers yelled and cheered as Annabeth and two of her siblings ran into the pavilion, carrying a silk banner. It was about 10 feet long, glistening grey, with a painting of a barn owl above an olive tree. From the opposite side of the pavilion, Clarice and her buddies ran in with another banner of identical side but gaudy red painted with a blood spear and a boar's head. I turned to look and yelled over the noise. Those are the flags? Yeah. Ares and Athena always lead the teams? Not always, he said, but often. So if another cabin captures one, what do? Repaint the flag? He grinned. You'll see. First we have to get one. Whose side are we on? He gave me a sly look as if he knew something I didn't. The scar on his face made him look almost evil in the torchlight. We made a temporary alliance with Athena. Tonight we get the flag from Ares, and you are going to help. The teams were announced. Athena had made an alliance with Apollo and Hermes, the two biggest cabins. Apparently, privileges had been traded. Shower times, chore schedules, and best slots for activities in order to win their support. Ares had allied themselves with everybody else: Dionysus, Demeter, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus. From what I'd seen, Dionysus' kids were actually good athletes, but they were only two of them. Demeter's kids had the edge with natural skills and outdoor stuff, but they weren't very aggressive. Aphrodite's sons and daughters I wasn't too worried about. They mostly sat out every activity and checked their reflections in the lake and did their hair and gossiped. Hephaestus' kids weren't pretty, and there were only four of them, but they were big and burly from working in the metal shop all day. They might be a problem. That, of course, left Adie's cabin a dozen of the biggest, ugliest, meanest kids on Long Island or anywhere else on the planet. Kyron hammered his hoof on the marble. Heroes! He announced. You know the rules. The creek in the boundary line. The entire forest is fair game. All magic items are allowed. The banner must be prominently displayed and have no more than two cards. Prisoners may be disarmed but not bound or gagged. No killing or maiming is allowed. I will serve as referee and battlefield medic. Arm yourselves. He spread his hands, and the table was suddenly covered with equipment, helmet, bronze, sword, spear. Whoa, I said. We're really supposed to use these? Luke looked at me as if I were crazy. Unless you want to get skewered by your friends in Cabin 5. Here, Kyron thought these would fit. You'd be on border patrol. My shield was the size of an NBA backboard with a big caduceus in the middle. It weighed about 1,000,000 pounds. I could have snowboarded on it fine, but I hoped nobody seriously expected me to run fast. My helmet, like all the helmets on Athena's side, had a blue horsehair plume on top. Ares and their allies had red plumes. Annabeth yelled, Blue team, forward! We cheered and shook our swords and followed her down the path of the south, the south of the woods. The red team yelled taunts at us as they headed off towards the north. I managed to catch up with Annabeth without tripping over my equipment. Hey, she kept marching. So what's the plan? I asked. Got any magic items you can loan me? Her hand drifted towards her pocket as if she were afraid I'd stolen something. Just watch Clarice's spear, she said. You won't take that thing. You don't want that thing touching you. Otherwise, don't worry. We'll take the banner from Ares. Has Luke given you your job? Border patrol. Whatever that means. It's easy. Stand by the creek. Keep the reds away. Leave the rest to me. Athena always has a plan. She pushed ahead, leaving me in the dust. Okay, I mumbled. Glad you wanted me on your team. It was a warm, sticky night. The woods were dark with fireflies popping in and out of view. Annabeth stationed me next to a little creek that gurgled over some rocks. Then she and the rest of the team scattered into the trees. Standing there alone with my big blue feathered helmet and my huge shield, I felt like an idiot. The bronze sword, like all the swords I tried so far, seemed balanced wrong. The leather grip pulled out my hand like a bowling ball. There was no way anybody would actually attack me, would they? I mean, Olympus had to be to have liabilities issues, right? Far away, the conch horn blew. I heard whoops and yells in the woods and clanking of metal. Kids fighting. A blue plumbed alley from Apollo raced past me like a deer, leaped through the creek and disappeared into the enemy territory. Great, I thought. I'll miss all the fun, as usual. Then I hear a sound that sent a chill up my spine. A, a low canine growl, somewhere close by. I raised my shield instinctively. I had a feeling something was stalking me. Then the growling stopped. I felt the presence retreating. On the other side of the creek, the underbush exploded. 5 AD's warriors came yelling and screaming out of the dark. Cream the punk! Clarice yelled. Her ugly pig eyes glared through the slits of her helmet. She brandished a 5 foot long spear. Its barbed metal tip flickered with red light. Her siblings had only the standard issue bronze swords. Not that made me feel any better. They changed across the street. They charged across the stream. There was no help in sight. I could run, or I could defend myself against the half of the Ares cable. I managed to sidestep the first kid swing, but these guys were not as stupid as Minotaur. They surrounded me and Clarice thrust at me with her spear. My shield deflected the point as I felt a painful tingling all over my body. My hair stood at the end. My shield arm went numb, and the air burned. Electricity. Her stupid spear was electric. I fell back. Another Aries guy slammed me in the chest with the butt of his sword, and I hit the dirt. They could have kicked me into jelly, but they were too busy laughing. Give him a haircut, Clarice said. Grab his hair. I managed to get to my feet. I raised my sword, but Clarice slammed it aside with her spear as sparks flew. Now both my arms felt numb. Oh wow, Clarice said. I'm scared of this guy. Really scared. The flag is that way, I told her. I wanted to sound angry, but as I was afraid it didn't come out that way. Yeah, one of her siblings said. But see, we don't care about the flag. We care about the guy who made our cabin look stupid. You do that without my help, I told them. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to say. Two of them came to me. I backed up towards the creek, tried to raise my shield, but Clarice was too fast. Her spear stuck me straight in my ribs. If I hadn't been wearing a armor breastplate, I could have been shish kebabed as it was. The electric point just shocked my teeth out of my mouth. One of her cabin mates slashed his sword across my arm, leaving a good sized cut. Seeing my blood made me dizzy, warm and cold at the same time. No maiming, I managed to say. Oops, the guy said. Guess I lost my desert privilege. He pushed me into the creek and I landed with a splash. They all laughed. I figured as soon as they were through being amused, I would die. But then something happened. The water seemed to wake up my senses, as if I'd just had a bag of my mom's double espresso jelly beans. Clarice and her cabinmates came into the creek to get me, but I stood to meet them. I knew what to do. I swung the flat of my sword against the first guy's head and knocked his helmet clean off. I hit him so hard I could see his eyes vibrating as he crumpled into the water. Ugly number 2 and ugly number 3 came at me. I slammed one in the face with my shield and used my sword to shear off the other guy's horsehair plume. Both of them backed away. Quick. Ugly number 4 didn't look really anxious to attack, but Clarice kept coming, the point of her spear crackling with energy. As soon as she thrust, I caught the shaft between the edges of my shield and my sword, and it snapped like a twig. Ah! She screamed. You idiot! You corpse-bred worm! She probably would have said worse, but I smacked her between the eyes with my sword's butt and sent her stumbling backward out of the creek. Then I heard yelling, elated screams, and I saw Luke racing towards the boundary line with the red team's banner lifted high. He was flanked by a couple of Hermes guys governing his retreat, and a few Apollos behind them. Fighting off the Festus cabin, the Ares folks got up, and Clarice murmured a dazed curse. A trick! She shouted. It was a trick! She staggered after Luke, but it was too late. Everybody converged on the creek as Luke ran across into friendly territory. Our side exploded into cheers. The red banner shimmered and turned to silver. The bow and spears were replaced with the huge caduceus, the symbol of Cabin 11. Everybody on the blue team picked up Luke and started carrying him around on his shoulders. Kyron countered out from the woods and blew the conch horn. The game was over. We had won. I was about to join the celebration when Annabeth's voice right next to me in the creek said, Not bad, hero. I looked, but she wasn't there. Where the heck did you learn to fight like that? She asked. The air shimmered and she materialized, holding a Yankees basketball cap as if she had just taken it off her head. I felt myself getting angry. I wasn't even fazed by the fact that she had just been invisible. You set me up, I said. You put me here because you knew Clarice would come after me, while you sent Luke around the flank. You had it all figured out. Annabeth shrugged. I told you, Athena always has a plan. A plan to get me pulverized? I came as fast as I could. I was about to jump in, but she shrugged. You didn't need my help. She noticed my wounded arm. How did you do that? Sword cut? I said. What do you think? No, it was a sword cut. Look at it. The blood was gone. Where the huge cut there was a long white scratch, and even that was fading. As I watched, it turned into smaller scab and disappeared. I don't get it. Annabeth was thinking hard. I could almost see the gears turning. She looked down at my feet, then at Clarice's broken spear, and said, Step out of the water, Percy. What? Just do it. I came out of the creek and immediately felt bone tired. My arms started to go numb again. My adrenaline rushed left me. I almost fell over, but Annabeth steadied me. Oh, sticks, she cursed. This is not good. I didn't want. I assumed it would be Zeus. Before I could ask what she meant, I heard the canine growl again, but much closer than before. A howl ripped through the forest. The campers cheering died instantly. Karen shouted something in ancient Greek, which I could realize only later. I had understood perfectly. Stand ready, my bow! Annabeth drew her sword. There, on the rocks just above us, was a black hound the size of a rhino, with lava-red eyes and fangs like daggers. It was looking straight at me. Nobody moved except Annabeth, who yelled, Percy, run! She tried to step in front of me, but the hound was too fast. It leaped over her, an enormous shadow with teeth, and just as it hit me as I stumbled backward and fell in razor-sharp claws ripping through my armor. There was a cascade of talking sounds, like 40 pieces of paper being ripped one after another. From the hound's neck spouted a cluster of arrows. The monster fell dead at my feet. By some miracle, I was still alive. I didn't want to look underneath the ruins of the shredded armor. My chest felt warm and wet, and I knew I was badly cut. Another second, the monster would have turned me into 100 pounds of terrestrial meat. Karan trotted up next to us, a bow in his hand, his face grim. Team Mortals, Annabeth said. That's a hellhound from the fields of punishment. They're not supposed to. Someone summoned it, Karen said. Someone inside the camp. Luke came over, the banner in his hand forgotten, his moment of glory gone. Clarice yelled. It was all Percy's fault. Percy summoned it. Be quiet, child, Karen told her. We watched the body of the hellhound melt into the shadow, soaking into the ground until it disappeared. You wound it, Annabeth told me. Quick, Percy, get into the water. I'm okay. No, you're not, she said. Karen, watch this. I was too tired to argue. I stepped back into the creek. The whole camp gathered around me. Instantly, I felt better. I could feel the cuts on my chest closing up. Some of the campers gasped. Look, I don't know why, I said, trying to apologize. I'm sorry. But they weren't watching my wound heal. They were staring at something above my head. Percy, Annabeth said, pointing. That. By the time I looked up, the sign was already fading, but I could still make out the hologram, a green trident light, spinning and gleaming, a three-tipped spear, a trident. Your father, Annabeth murmured. This is really not good. It is determined, Chiron announced. All around me, campers started kneeling. Even the Aries came in, though they didn't look happy about it. My father? I asked, completely bewildered. Poseidon, said Chiron. Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of horses. Hail Percy Jackson, son of the sea god.
Chapter 9. I'm offered a quest. The next morning, Chiron moved me to cabin 3. I didn't have to share with anybody. I had plenty of room for all my stuff. The Minotaur's horn, one set of spare clothes, and a toiletry bag. I got to sit at my own dinner table, make all my own activities, call lights out, whenever I felt like it, and not listen to anybody else. And I was absolutely miserable. Just when I had started to feel accepted,
to feel I had a home in Cabin 11 and I might be a normal kid, or as normal as you can be when you're a half blood, I've been separated out as if I had some rare disease. Nobody mentioned the hellhound, but I got the feeling they were all talking about it behind my back. The attack had everybody scared. It sent two messages. One, that I was the son of the sea god, and two, monsters could stop at nothing to kill me. They could even invade a camp that had always been considered safe. The other campers steered clear of me as much as possible. Cabin 11 was too nervous to have sword classes with me after what I had done to the Aries folks in the woods. So my lessons with Luke became one-to-one. He pushed me harder than ever and wasn't afraid to bruise me up in the process. You're going to need all the training you can get, he promised, as if we were working with swords and flaming torches. Now let's try the viper beheading strike again, 50 more repetitions. Annabeth still taught me Greek in the morning, but she seemed distracted. Every time I said something, she scowled at me, as if I'd just poked her between the eyes. After lesson, she would walk away, muttering to herself, "Quest, Poseidon, dirty rotten. Got to make a plan." Even Clarice kept her distance, though her venomous looks made it clear she wanted to kill me for breaking her magic spear. I wish she would just yell or punch me or something. I'd rather get into fight every day than be ignored. I knew somebody at camp resented me because one night I came into cabin and found a mortal newspaper dropped inside the doorway, a copy of New York Daily News. Opened the Metro page. The article took me almost an hour to read because the angrier I got, the more the words floated around on the page. Boy and mother still missing after freak car accident by Eileen Smith. Sally Jackson and son Percy are still missing 1 week after their mysterious disappearance. The family's badly burned 78 Camaro was discovered last Saturday on a North Long Island road with the roof ripped off and the front axle broken. The car had flipped and skidded for several hundred feet before exploding. Mother and son had gone for a weekend vacation to Montauk, but left hastily under mysterious circumstances. Small traces of blood were found in the car and near the scene of the wreck, but there were no other signs of missing Jacksons. Residents in the rural area report seeing nothing unusual around the time of the accident. Miss Jackson's husband, Gabe Ugliano, claims that his stepson Percy Jackson is a troubled child who has been kicked out of numerous boarding schools and has expressed violent tendencies in the past. Police would not say whether son Percy is a suspect in his mother's disappearance, but they have not ruled out foul play. Below are recent pictures of Sally Jackson and Percy. Police urge anyone with information to call the following toll-free Crime Stoppers hotline. The phone number was circled in black marker. I weighted up the paper and threw it away, then flopped down in my bunk bed in the middle of the empty cabin. "Lights out," I told myself miserably. That night I had my worst dream yet. I was running along the beach in a storm. This time, there was a city behind me. Not New York. The sprawl was different. Buildings spread farther apart, palm trees and low hills in the distance. About 100 yards down the surf, two men were fighting. They looked like TV wrestlers, muscular, with beards and long hair. Both wore flowing Greek tunics, one tipped in blue, the other in green. They grappled with each other, wrestled, kicked, and headbutted and every time they connected, lightning flashed. The sky grew darker and the wind rose. I had to stop them. I didn't know why, but the harder I ran, the more the wind blew me back, until I was running in place, my heels digging uselessly in the sand. Over the roar of the storm, I could hear the blue-robed one yelling at the green-robed one. "Give it back! Give it back!" like a kindergartner fighting over a toy. The waves got bigger, crashing into the beach, spraying me with salt. I yelled, "Stop it! Stop fighting!" The ground shook. Laughter came from somewhere under the earth, and a voice so deep and evil it turned me my blood to ice. Come down, little hero, his voice crooned. Come down. The sand split beneath me, opening up a crevice straight down to the center of the earth. My feet slipped, and darkness swallowed me. I woke up sure I was falling. I was still in bed in cabin 3. My body told me it was morning, but it was dark outside, and thunder rolled across the hills. A storm was brewing. I hadn't dreamed that I heard a clopping sound at the door, a hoof knocking on the threshold. Come in. Grover trotted inside, looking worried. Mr. D wants to see you. Why? He wants to kill. I'd better let him tell you. Nervously, I got dressed and followed, sure that I was in huge trouble. For days I had been half expecting a summon to the big houses. Now that I was declared a son of Poseidon, one of the big 3 gods who weren't supposed to have kids, I figured it was a crime for me just to live. The other the other gods had probably been debating the best way to punish me for existing, and now Mr. D was ready to deliver their verdict. Over Long Island Sound, the sky looked like ink soup coming to a boil. A hazy curtain of rain was coming in our direction. I asked Grover if he needed an umbrella. No, he said. It never rains here unless we want it to. I pointed at the storm. What the heck is that then? He glanced uneasily at the sky. It will pass around us. Bad weather always does. I realized he was right. In the week I had been here, it had never even been overcast. The few rain clouds I had seen had skirted around the edges of the valley. But this storm, and this one, was huge. At the volleyball pit, the kids from Apollo's cabins were playing a morning game against satyrs. Dionysus twins were walking around in the strawberry fields making the plants grow. Everybody was going about their normal business, but they looked tense. They kept their eyes on the storm. Grover and I walked up to the front porch of the big house. Dionysus sat at Pinocchio table in his tiger-striped Hawaiian shirt with his Diet Coke, just as he had on my first day. Kyron sat across the table in his fake wheelchair. They were playing against invisible opponents, 2 sets of cards hovering in the air. Well, well, Mr. D said without looking up, our little celebrity. I waited. Come closer, Mr. D said, and don't expect me to kowtow to you, mortal, just because old Barnacle Beard is your father. A net of lightning flashed across the clouds. Thunder shook the windows of the house. Blah, 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 Dionysus said. Kyron feigned interest in his Pinocchio cards. Grover cover, cowered by the railing, his hooves clopping back and forth. If I had my way, Dionysus said, I would case your molecules to erupt in flames. We'd sweep up the ashes and be done with a lot of trouble. But Kyron seems to feel this would be against my mission at this cursed camp, to keep your little brats safe from harm. Spontaneous combustion is a form of harm, Mr. D, Kyron put in. Nonsense, Dionysus said. Boy wouldn't feel a thing. Nevertheless, I've been agreed to restrain myself. I'm thinking of turning you into a dolphin instead, sending you back to your father. Mr. D, Kyron mourned. Oh, all right, Dionysus relented. There's one more option, but it's deadly foolishness. Dionysus rose, and the invisible player's cards dropped to the table. I'm off to Olympus for the emergency meeting. If the boy is still here when I get back, I'll turn him into an Atlantic bottlenose. Do you understand? And Percy Jackson. If you're at all smart, you'll see that's a much more sensible choice than what Kyron feels you must do. Dionysus picked up a playing card, twisted it, and it became a plastic rectangle. A credit card? No, a security pass. He snapped his fingers. The air seemed to fold and bend around him. He became a hologram, then he was gone.
leaving only the smell of fresh pressed grapes lingering behind. Kyron smiled at me, but he looked tired and strained. Sit, Percy, and Grover, please. We did. Kyron laid his cards on the table, a winning hand he hadn't gotten to use. Tell me, Percy, what did you make of the hellhound? Just hearing the name made me shudder. Kyron probably wanted me to say, heck, it was nothing. I eat hellhounds for breakfast. But I didn't feel like lying. It scared me, I said. If you hadn't shot it, I'd be dead. You'll meet worse, Percy. Far worse. Before you're done. Done with what? Your quest, of course. Will you accept it? I glanced at Grover, who was crossing his fingers. Sir, I said, you haven't told me what it is yet. Karen grimaced. Well, that's the hard part, the details. Thunder rumbled across the valley. The storm clouds and now reached the edge of the beach. As far as I could see, the sky and the sea were boiling together. Poseidon and Zeus, I said, they're fighting over something valuable. Something that was stolen, aren't they? Kyron and Grover exchanged looks. Kyron sat forward in his wheelchair. How did you know that? My face felt hot. I wished I hadn't opened my big mouth. The weather since Christmas has been weird, like the sea and the sky are fighting. Then I talked to Annabeth, and she had overheard something about a theft. And I've also been having these dreams. I knew it, Grover said. Hush, satire, Kyron ordered. But it is his quest. Grover's eyes were bright with excitement. It must be. Only the oracle can determine. Kyron stroked his bristly beard. Nevertheless, Percy, you are correct. Your father and Zeus are having their worst quarrel in centuries. They're fighting over something valuable that was stolen. To be precise, a lightning bolt. I laughed nervously. A what? Do not take this lightly, Kyron warned. I am not talking about some tinfoil covered zigzag you'd see in a second grade play. I am talking about a 2 foot long cylinder of high grade celestial bronze caped on both ends with cord level explosives. Oh, Zeus, Zeus's master bolt, Kyron said, getting worked up now. The symbol of his power from which all other lightning bolts are patterned. The first weapon made by the Cyclops for the war against the Titans. The bolt that sheared the top of Mount Etna and hurled Kronos from his throne. The master bolt which packs enough power to make mortal hydrogen bombs look like firecrackers. And it's missing? Stolen, Karen said. By who? By whom? Karen corrected. Once a teacher, always a teacher. By you. My mouth fell open. At least, Karen held up a hand. That's what Zeus thinks. During the winter solstice, at the last council of the gods, Zeus and Poseidon had an argument. The usual nonsense. Mother Rhea always liked you best. Air disaster are more spectacular than sea disasters, etc. After Zeus realized his master boat was missing, taken from the throne under his very nose, he immediately blamed Poseidon. Now a god cannot usurp another god's symbol of power directly. That is forbidden by the most ancient of divine laws. But Zeus believes your father convinced a human hero to take it. But I didn't. Patience and listen, child, Chiron said. Zeus has good reasons to be suspicious. The forges of the Cyclops are under the ocean, which give Poseidon some influence over the makers of his brother's lightning. Zeus believes Poseidon has taken the master bolt and is now secretly having the Cyclops build an arsenal of illegal copies, which might be used to topple Zeus from his throne. And the only thing Zeus wasn't sure about was which hero Poseidon used to steal the bolt. Now Poseidon has openly claimed you as his son. You were in New York over the winter holidays. You could easily have snuck into Olympus. Zeus believes he has found his thief. But I never even been to Olympus. Zeus is crazy. Chiron and Grover glanced nervously at the sky. The clouds didn't seem to be parting around us. As Grover had promised, they were rolling straight over our valley, sealing us like a coffin lid. Percy,
Grover said. We don't use the C word to describe the Lord of the Sky. Perhaps paranoid, Karen suggested. Then again, Poseidon has tried to unseat Zeus before. I believe that was question 38 on your final exam. He looked at me as if actually expecting me to remember the question 38. How could anyone accuse me of stealing a god's weapon? I couldn't even steal a slice of pizza from Gabe's poker party without getting busted. Kyron was waiting for an answer. Something about a golden net, I guessed. Poseidon, I guessed. Poseidon and Hera had a few other gods. They trapped Zeus and wouldn't let him out until he promised to be better ruler, right? Correct, Karen said, and Zeus has never trusted Poseidon since. Of course, Poseidon denies stealing the Master Bolt. He took great offense at the accusation. The two have been arguing back and forth for months, threatening war, and now you've come along, the proverbial last straw. But I'm just a kid. Percy, Grover cut in, if you were Zeus and you already thought your brother was plotting to overthrow you, then your brother suddenly admitted he had broken the sacred oath he took after World War II, and he's fathered a new mortal hero who might be used as a weapon against you. Wouldn't that put a twist in your toga? But I didn't do anything. Poseidon, my dad, he didn't really have his master bolt stolen, did he? Karen sighed. Most thinking observers would agree that thievery is not Poseidon's style, but the sea god is too proud to try convincing Zeus of that. Zeus has demanded that Poseidon return the bolt by summer solstice. That's June 21st, 10 days from now. Poseidon wants an apology for being called a thief by the same date. I hope the diplomacy might prevail that Hera or Demeter or Hestia would make the two brothers see sense. But your arrival has inflamed Zeus' temper. Now, neither god will back down unless someone intervenes, unless the Master Bowl is found and returned to Zeus before the solstice. There will be a war. And do you know what a full-fledged war would look like, Percy? Bad, I guessed. Imagine the world in chaos, nature at the war with itself, Olympians forced to choose sides between Zeus and Poseidon, destruction, carnage, millions dead, Western civilization turned into battleground so big it will make the Trojan War look like a water balloon fight. Bad, I repeated, and you, Percy Jackson, would be the first to feel Zeus's wrath. It started to rain. Volleyball players stopped their game and stared in stunned silence at the sky. I had brought the storm to Camp Howlett here. Zeus was punishing the whole camp because of me. I was furious. So I have to find the stupid bolt, I said, and return it to Zeus. What better peace offering, Karen said, than to have the son of Poseidon return Zeus's property. If Poseidon doesn't have it, where is the thing? I believe I know. Karen's expression was grim. Part of a prophecy I had years ago. Well, some of the lines make sense to me now, but before I can say more, you must officially take up the quest. You must seek the counsel of the oracle. Why can't you tell me where the bolt is beforehand? Because if I did, you would be too afraid to accept the challenge. I swallowed. Good answer, good reason. You agree then? I looked at Grover, who nodded encouragingly. Easy for him. I was the one Zeus wanted to kill. All right, I said. It's better than being turned into a dolphin. Then it's time you consult the oracle, Karen said. Go upstairs, Percy Jackson, to the attic. When you come down, back, assuming you are still sane, we will talk more. 4 flights up the stairs ended under a green trapdoor. I pulled the cord, the door swung down, and a wooden ladder clattered into place. The warm air from above smelled like mildew and rotten wood and something else, a smell I remembered from biology class. Reptiles, the smell of snakes. I held my breath and climbed. The attic was filled with Greek hero junk, armor strands covered in cobwebs, once bright shields pitted with rust, on old leather steamer trunks plastered with stickers saying Ithaca, Circe's Isle, and land of the Amazons. One log table was stacked with glass jars filled with pickled things. Severed, hairy claws, huge yellow eyes, various other parts of monsters. A dusty mounted trophy on the wall looked like a giant snake head, but with horns and a full set of shark teeth. The plague rat, Hydra head. Hashtag 1. Woodstock NY 1969. By the window, sitting on a wooden tripod stool, was the most gruesome memento of all, a mummy. Not the wrapped in cloth kind, but a human female body shriveled to husk. She wore a tie-dyed sundress, lots of beaded necklaces, and a headband over her black hair. The skin of her face was thin and leathery over the skull, and her eyes were glassy white slits as if the real eyes had been replaced by marbles. She had been dead a long, long time ago. Looking at her sent chills up my back. And that was before she sat up on her stool and opened her mouth. A green mist poured from the mummy's mouth, coiling over the floor in thick tendrils, hissing like 20,000 snakes. I stumbled over myself, trying to get to the trapdoor, but it slammed shut. Inside my head, I heard a voice, slithering into one ear and calling around my brain. I am the spirit of Delphi, speaker of the prophecies of Phoebus Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python, approach seeker, and ask. I wanted to say no, thanks, wrong door, just looking for a bathroom. But I forced myself to take a deep breath. The mummy wasn't alive. She was some kind of gruesome receptacle for something else. The power that was now swirling around me in the green mist, but its presence didn't feel evil, like my demonic math teacher, Mrs. Dodds, or the Minotaur. It felt more like the three fates I'd seen knitting the yarn outside the highway fruit stand. Ancient, powerful, and definitely not human, but not particularly interested in killing me either. I got up the courage to ask, "What is my destiny?" The mist swirled more thickly, collecting right in front of me and around the table with pickled monster part jars. Suddenly, there were four men sitting around the table, playing cards. Their faces became clever. It was Smelly Gabe and his buddies. My fists clenched, though I knew this poker party couldn't be real. It was an illusion made out of mist. Gabe turned toward me and spoke in the rasping voice of the oracle. "You shall go west and face the god who has turned." His buddy on the right looked up and said in the same voice, "You shall find what was stolen and see it safely return." The guy on the left threw in two poker chips, then said, "You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend." Finally, Eddie, a building super, delivered the worst line of all. "And you shall fail to save what matters the most in the end." The figure began to dissolve. At first, I was too stunned to say anything, but as the mist retreated, coiling into a huge green serpent and slithering back into the mouth of the mummy, I cried, "Wait! What do you mean? What friend? What will I fail to serve?" The tail of the mist snake disappeared into the mummy's mouth. She reclined back against the wall, her mouth closed tight as if it hadn't been open in 100 years. The attic felt silent, abandoned, nothing but a room full of mementos. I got the feeling that I could stand here until I had cobwebs too, and I couldn't learn anything else. My audience with the oracle was over. "Well?" Karen asked me. I slumped into a chair at the pinochle table. "She said I would retrieve what was stolen." Grover sat forward, chewing excitedly of the remains of the tired cook can. "That's great." "What did the oracle say exactly?" Karen pressed. "That is important." My ears were still tingling from the reptilian voice. She said I would go west and face a god who had turned. I would retrieve that what was stolen and see it safely returned. "I knew it," Grover said. Karen didn't look satisfied. "Anything else?" I didn't want to tell him. What friend would betray me? I didn't have that many, and the last line I would fail to save what mattered the most. What kind of oracle would send me on a quest and tell me, "Oh, by the way, you'll fail"? How could I confess that? "No," I said. "That's about it." He studied my face. "Very well, Percy. But know this: the oracle's word often have double meanings. Don't dwell on them too much. The truth is not always clear until events come to pass." I got the feeling he knew I was holding back something bad, and he was trying to make me feel better. "Okay," I said, anxious to change the topic. "So, where do I go? Who's this god in the west?" "Ah, think, Percy," Karen said. "If Zeus and Poseidon waken each other in a war, who stands again? Who stands to gain?" "Somebody else who wants to take over?" I guessed. "Yes, quite someone who harbors a grudge. Oh, who has been unhappy with his lot since the world has divided eons ago, whose kingdom would grow powerful with the deaths of millions. Someone who hates his brothers for forcing him into an oath to have no more children, an oath that both of them broke now." I thought about my dreams, the evil voice that had spoken from under the ground. "Hades," Karen nodded. "The Lord of the Dead is the only possibility." The scrap of aluminium dribbled out of Grover's mouth. "Whoa, wait, what?" "A fury came after Percy," Karen reminded. "She watched the young man until he was sure of his identity, then tried to kill him. Furies obeying only one lord, Hades." "Yes, but Hades hates all heroes," Grover protested, "especially if he has found out Percy is a son of Poseidon." "A hellhound got into the forest," Chiron continued. "Those who can only be summoned from the fields of punishment. And it had to be summoned from the fields of punishment, and it had to be summoned by someone within the camp. Hades must have a spy here. He must suspect Poseidon will try to use Percy to clear his name. Hades would very much like to kill this half-blood before he can take on the quest." "Great," I murmured. "That's two major gods who want to kill me." "But a quest too," Grover swallowed. "I mean, couldn't the Master Bolt be in some place like means very nice this time of year?" "Hades sent a minion to steal the Master Bolt," Chiron insisted. "He hid it in the underworld, knowing full well that Zeus would blame Poseidon. I don't pretend to understand the Lord of Death's motives perfectly, or what he chose this time to start a war, but one thing is sure. Percy must go to the underworld, find the Master Bolt, and reveal the truth." A strange fire burned in my stomach. The weirdest thing was, it wasn't fear, it was anticipation, the desire for revenge. Hades had tried to kill me 3 times so far, with the Fury, the Minotaur, and the Hellhound. It was his fault my mother had disappeared in a flash of light. Now he was trying to frame me and my dad for a theft hadn't committed. I was ready to take him on. Besides, if my mother was in the underworld. "Whoa, boy," said the small part of my brain that was still sane. "You're a kid. Hades is a god." Grove was trembling. He started eating pinochle cards with like potato chips. The poor guy needed to complete a quest with me so he could get his searcher's license. Whatever that was, but how could I ask him to do this quest, especially when the oracle said I was destined to fail? That was suicide. "Look, if we know it's Hades," I told Chiron, "why can't we just tell the other gods? Zeus or Poseidon would go down to the underworld and bust some heads." "Suspecting and knowing are not the same," Chiron said. "Besides, even if the other gods suspect Hades, and I imagine Poseidon does, he couldn't retrieve the bolt themselves. Gods cannot cross each other's territories except by invitation. That is another ancient rule. Heroes, on the other hand, have certain privileges. They can go anywhere, challenge anyone as long as they are bold enough and strong enough to do it. No god can be held responsible for a hero's action. Why do you think the gods always operate through humans?" "You're saying I'm being used." "I'm saying it's no accident Poseidon has claimed you now. It's very risky. risky gamble, but he's in desperate situation. He needs you. My dad needs me. Emotions rolled around inside me like bits of glasses in a kaleidoscope. I didn't know whether to feel resentful or grateful or happy or angry. Poseidon had ignored me for 12 years. Now suddenly he needed me. I looked at Karan. You know I was Poseidon's son all along, haven't you? I had my suspicions. As I said, I've spoken to the oracle too. I got the feeling there was a lot he wasn't telling me about his prophecy. But I decided it couldn't work. I couldn't worry about about the right now. About that right now. After all, I was holding back information too. So let me get this straight. I'm supposed to go to the underworld and confront the Lord of Hades. Check, Callan said. Find the most powerful weapon in the universe. Check. And get it back to Olympus before the summer solstice in 10 days. That's about right. I looked at Grover, who gulped down the ace of hearts. Did I mention that Maine is very nice this time of the year? He asked weakly. You don't have to go, I told him. I can't ask that, do you? Oh, he shifted his hopes. No, it's just that satires in underground places. Well, he took a deep breath, then stood brushing the shredded cards and aluminium bits of the t-shirt. You saved my life, Percy. If you're serious about wanting me along, I won't let you down. I felt so relieved I wanted to cry. Though I didn't think that would be very heroic. Grover was the only friend I had ever had for longer than a few months. I wasn't sure what good a satire could do against the forces of the dead, but I felt better knowing he'd be with me. All the way, G-Man. I turned to Kyron. So where do we go? The oracle just said go west. The entrance to the underworld is always in the west. It moves from age to age like Olympus. Right now, of course, it is in America. Where? Kyron looked surprised. I thought that would be obvious enough. The entrance of the underworld is in Los Angeles. Oh, I said. Naturally. So we just get on a plane. No! Grover shrieked. Percy, what are you thinking? Have you ever been on a plane in your life? I shook my head, feeling embarrassed. My mother had never taken me anywhere by plane. She always said we didn't have the money. Besides, her parent had died in a plane crash. Percy, think, Kyan said. You're the son of sea god. Your father's bitterest rival is Zeus, lord of the sky. Your mother knew better than to trust you in an aeroplane. You would be in Zeus's domain. You would never come down again alive. Overhead, lightning crackled. Thunder boomed. Okay, I said, determined not to look at the storm. So I travel overland? That's right, Karen said. 2 companions may accompany you. Grover is one. The other has already volunteered if you will accept her help. Gee, I said, feigning the surprise. Who else would be stupid enough to volunteer for a quest like this? The air shimmered behind Karen. Annabeth became visible, stuffing her Yankees cap into her pocket. I've been waiting a long time for a quest, Seaweed Brain, she said. Athena is no fan of Poseidon, but if you are going to save the world, I'm the best person to keep you from messing up. If you do say so yourself, I said. I suppose you have a plan, wise girl. Her cheeks colored. Do you want my help or not? The truth was, I did. I needed all help I could get. A trio, I said. That'll work. Excellent, Kyron said. This afternoon we can take you as far as the bus terminal in Manhattan. After that, you are on your own. Lightning flashed. Rain poured down on the meadows. There that were never stopped
Chapter 10.
to have
I
violent
a
weather.
perfectly good bus.
No time
It
to
didn't
waste,
take me
Karen
long
said. I
to
think we
pack.
should all get
I
packing.
decided to leave the winter horn in my cabin, which left me only an extra change of clothes and a toothbrush to stuff in a backpack Grover had found for me. The camp store loaned me $100 in mortal money and 20 golden drachmas. These coins were as big as Girl Scout cookies and had images of various Greek gods stamped on one side and the Empire State Building on the other. The ancient mortal drachmas had been silver.
Kyron told us, but Olympians never use less than pure gold. Kyron said the coins might come in handy for non mortal transactions, whatever that meant. He gave Annabeth and me each a canteen of nectar and a Ziploc bag full of ambrosia squares, and to be used only in emergencies if we were seriously hurt. It was god food, Kyron reminded us. It would cure us almost any injury, but it was lethal to mortals. Too much of it would make a half blood very, very feverish. An overdose could burn us up literally. Annabeth was bringing her magic Yankees cap, which she told me had been her 12th birthday present from her mom. She carried a book on famous classical architecture written in ancient Greek to read when she got bored, and a long bronze knife hidden in her shirt sleeve. I was sure the knife would get us busted the first time we went through a metal detector. Grover wore his fake feet and his pants to pass as human. He wore a green Rasta style cap, which, because when it rained, his curly hairs flattened and you could see the tips of his horns. His bright orange backpack was full of scrap metal and apples to snack on. In his pocket was a set of reed pipes his daddy goat had carved for him, even though he only knew two songs, Mozart's Piano Concert Number 12 and Hilary Duff's So Yesterday, both of which sounded pretty bad on reed pipes. We waved goodbye to the other campers, took one last look at the strawberry fields, the ocean, and the big house, then hiked up Half Blood Hill to the tall pine tree that used to be Talia's daughter of Zeus. Kyron was waiting for us in his wheelchair. Next to him stood the surfer dude I'd seen when I was recovering in the sick room. According to Grover, the guy has been camp's head of security. He supposedly had eyes all over his body, so he could never be surprised. Today, though, he was wearing a chauffeur's uniform, so I could only see extra peepers on his hands, face, and neck. This is Argus, Karen told me. He will drive you into the city and will keep an eye on things. I heard footsteps behind me. Luke came running up the hill, carrying a pair of basketball shoes. Hey, he panted. Glad I caught you. Annabeth blushed, the way she always did when Luke was around. Just wanted to say good luck, and I thought, maybe you could use these. He handed me sneakers, which looked pretty normal. They even smelled kind of normal. Luke said, Maya! White bird's wings sprouted out of the heels, startling me so much I dropped them. The shoes flapped around the ground until the wings folded up and disappeared. Awesome, Grover said. Luke smiled. Those served me well when I was on my quest. Gift from Dad. Of course, I don't use them much these days. His expression turned sad. I didn't know what to say. It was cool enough that Luke had come to say goodbye. I'd been afraid he might resent me for getting so much attention the last few days. But here he was, giving me a magic gift. It made me blush almost as much as Annabeth. Hey man, I said, thanks. Listen, Percy. Luke looked comfortable. A lot of hopes are riding on you, so just kill some monsters for me, okay? We shook hands. Luke patted Grover's head between his horn, then gave a goodbye hug to Annabeth, who looked like she might pass out. After Luke was gone, I told her, You're hyperventilating. I'm not. You let him capture the flag instead of you, didn't you? Ugh. Why do I want to go anywhere with you, Percy? She stormed down the other side of hill, where a white SUV waited on the shoulder of the road. Argus followed, jingling his car keys. I picked up the flying shoes and had a sudden bad feeling. I looked at Kyron. I won't be able to use these, will I? He shook his head. Luke meant well, Percy, but taking to the air, that would not be wise for you. I nodded disappointment, but then I got an idea. Hey, Grover, you want a magic item? His eyes lit up. Me? Pretty soon, we had laced the sneakers over his fake feet. and the world's first flying goat boy was ready for launch. Maya! He shouted. He got off the ground okay, but then fell over sideways, so his backpack dragged through the grass. The winged shoes kept bucking up and down like tiny broncos. Practice, Karen called after him. You just need practice. Ah! Grover went flying sideways down the hill like a possessed lawnmower, heading towards the van. Before I could follow, Karen caught my arm. I should have trained you better, Percy, he said. If only I had more time. Hercules, Jason, they all got more training. That's okay. I just wish. I stopped myself. I was about to sound like a brat. I was wishing my dad had given me cool magic item to help for on the quest. Something as good as Luke's flying shoes or Annabeth's invisible cap. What am I thinking? Karen cried. I can't let you get away without this. He pulled a pen from his coat pocket and handed it to me. It was an ordinary disposal ballpoint black ink removable cap. Probably cost 30 cents. Gee, I said. Thanks. Percy, that's a gift from your father. I've kept it for years, not knowing you were who I was waiting for, but the prophecy is clear to me now. You are the one. I remember the field trip to Metropolitan Museum of Art when I had vaporized Mrs. Dodds. Karen had thrown me a pen and turned into a sword. Could this be? I took off the cap and the pen grew longer and heavier in my hand. In half a second, I held a shimmering bronze sword with a double-edged blade, a leather-wrapped grip, and a flat hilt riveted with gold studs. It was the first weapon that actually felt balanced in my hands. The sword has a long and tragic history, and we need not to go into it. Karen told me. Its name is Anaklumos, Riptide. I translated, surprised that ancient Greek came to me so easily. Use it only for emergencies, Karen said, and only against monsters. No hero would harm mortals unless absolutely necessary, of course, but this sword couldn't harm them in any case. I looked at the wickedly sharp blade. What do you mean, it wouldn't harm mortals? How could it not? The sword is Celestia's bone, forged by the Cyclops, tempered in the heart of Mount Etna, cooled in the river Lethe. It's deadly to monsters, to any creature from the underworld, provided they don't kill you first. The blade will pass through mortals like an illusion. They simply are not important enough for a blade to kill. And I should warn you, as a demigod, you can be killed by either celestial or normal weapons. You're twice as vulnerable. Good to know. Now recap the pen. I touched the pen cap to the sword tip, and instantly Riptide shrank to a ballpoint pen again. I tucked it in my pocket, a little nervous because I was famous for losing pens at school. You can't, Karen said. Can't what? Lose the pen. It is enchanted. It will always reappear in a pocket. Try it. I was wary, but I threw the pen as far as I could down the hill and watched it disappear in the grass. It may take a few moments, Karen told me. Now check your pocket. Sure enough, the pen was there. Okay, that's extremely cool, I admitted. But what if a mortal sees me pulling out a sword? Mist is a powerful thing, Percy. Mist? Yes. Read. The Iliad is the full reference to this stuff. Whenever divine or monstrous element mix with the mortal world, they generate mist, which obscures the vision of humans. You will see things just as they are, being a half-blood, but humans will interpret things quite differently. Remarkable, really, the lengths of which humans will go to fit things into their version of reality. I put Riptide back in my pocket. For the first time, the quest felt real. I was actually leaving Half-Blood Hill. I was heading west with no adult supervision, no backup plan, not even a cell phone. Karen said cell phones were traceable by monsters. If we used one, it would be worse than sending up a flare. I had no weapon stronger than a sword to fight off monsters and reach the land of death. Karen, I said, when you say the gods are immortal, I mean, there was a time before them, right? 4 ages before them, Actually, the time of the Titans was the Fourth Age, sometimes called the Golden Age, which is definitely a misnomer. The time of Western civilization and the rule of Zeus is the Fifth Age. So, what was it like before the gods? Karen pursed his lips. Even I am not old enough to remember that, child. But I don't know. But I know it was time of darkness and savagery for mortals. Kronos, the Lord of Titans, called his reign the Golden Age because men lived innocent and free of all knowledge. But that was mere propaganda. The Titan King cared nothing for your kind except as appetizing or a source of cheap entertainment. It was only in the early reign of Lord Zeus, Prometheus, the good Titan, brought fire to mankind, that your species began to progress. And even then, Prometheus was branded a radical thinker. Zeus punished him severely, as you may recall. Of course, eventually the god warmed to humans and Western civilization was born. But the gods can't die now, right? I mean, as long as Western civilization is alive, they are alive. So, even if I failed, nothing could happen so bad it would mess up everything, right? Karen gave me a mela- melancholy, melancholy smile. No one knows how long the age of West will last, Percy. The gods are immortal, yes, but then so were the titans. They still exist, locked away in their various prisons, forced to endure endless pain and punishment, reduced in powers, but still very much alive. May the fates forbid that the gods should ever suffer such a doom, or that we should ever return to the darkness and chaos of the past. All we can do, child, is follow our destiny. Our destiny? Assuming we know what that is? Relax, Karen told me. Keep a clear head. And remember, you may be about to prevent the biggest war in human history. Relax, I said. I am very relaxed. When I got to the bottom of the hill, I looked back under the pine tree that used to be Talia, daughter of Zeus. Chiron was now standing in full horseman form, holding his bow high in salute. Just your typical summer camp send off by a typical centaur. Argus drove us out of the countryside and into western Long Island. It felt weird to be on our highway again, Annabeth and Grover sitting next to me as if we were not normal carpoolers. After 2 weeks at Half Blood Hill, the real world seemed like fantasy. I found myself staring at every McDonald's, every kid in the back of their parents' car, every billboard in shopping mall. So far, so good, I told Annabeth. 10 miles and not a single monster. She gave me an irritated look. It's a bad luck to talk that way, seaweed brain. Remind me again. Why do you hate me so much? I don't hate you. Could have fooled me. She folded her cap of invisibility. Look, we're just not supposed to get along, okay? Our parents are rivals. Why? She sighed. How many reasons do you want? One time, my mom caught Poseidon with his girlfriend in the Athena's temple, which is hugely disrespectful. Another time, Athena and Poseidon competed to be the patron god of the city of Athens. Your dad created some stupid saltwater spring for his gift. My mom created the olive tree. The people saw that her gift was better, so they named the city after her. They must really like olives. Oh, forget it. Now, if she had invented pizza, that I couldn't understand. I said, forget it. In the front seat, Argus smiled. He didn't say anything, but one blue eye on the back of his neck winked at me. Traffic slowed us down in Queens. By the time we got into Manhattan, it was sunset and starting to rain. Argus dropped us at the Greyhound station on the Upper East Side, not far from my mom and Gabe's apartment. Taped to a mailbox was a soggy flyer with my picture on it. Have you seen this boy? I ripped it down before Annabeth and Grover could notice. Argus unloaded our bags, made sure we got our bus tickets, then drove away, the eye on the back of his head opening to watch us as he pulled out of the parking lot. I thought about how close I was to my old apartment. On a normal day, my mom would be home from the candy store by now. Smelly Gabe was probably up there right now, playing poker, not even missing her. Grover shuddered, his backpack. He gazed down the street in the direction I was looking. You want to know why she married him, Percy? I stared at him. Were you reading my mind or something? Just your emotions, he shrugged. Guess I forgot to tell you, satires can do that. You were thinking about your mom and your stepdad, right? I nodded, wondering what else Grover might have forgotten to tell me. Your mom married Gabe for you, Grover told me. You called him smelly, but you have got no idea that the guy has this aura. Yuck. I could smell him from here. I could smell traces of him on you, and you hadn't been near him for a week. Thanks. Where is the nearest shower? You should be grateful, Percy. Your stepfather smells so repulsive, humans could mask the presence of any demigod. As soon as I took a whiff inside the camera, I knew Gabe was been covering your scent for years. If you hadn't lived with him every summer, you probably would have been found by monsters a long time ago. Your mom stayed with him to protect you. She was a smart lady. She must have loved you a lot to put up with that guy, if that makes you feel any better. It didn't, but I forced myself not to show it. I'll see her again, I thought. She isn't gone. I wondered if I wondered if Grover could still read my emotions, mixed up as they were. I was glad he and Annabeth were with me, but I felt guilty that I hadn't been straight with them. I hadn't told them the reason I said to the crazy quest. The truth was, I didn't care about retrieving Zeus's lightning bolt, or saving the world, or even helping my father out of trouble. The more I thought about I resented Poseidon for never visiting me, never helping my mom, never even sending a lousy child support check. He had only claimed me because he needed a job done. All I cared about was my mom. Hades had taken her unfairly, and Hades was going to give her back. You will be betrayed by the one who calls you a friend, the oracle whispered in my mind. You will fail to save what matters most in the end. Shut up, I told it. The rain kept coming down. We got restless, waiting for the bus, and decided to play some hacky sack with one of Grover's apples. Annabeth was unbelievable. She would bounce apple off her knee, her elbow, her shoulder, whatever. I wasn't too bad myself. The game ended when I tossed the apple towards Grover, and it got too close to his mouth. In one mega goat bite, our hacky sack disappeared, core, stem, and all. Grover blushed. He tried to apologize, but Annabeth and I were too busy cracking up. Finally, the bus came. As we stood in line to board, Grover started looking around, sniffing the air like he smelled his favorite school cafeteria delicacy, enchiladas. What is it? I asked. I don't know, he said tensely. Maybe it's nothing. But I could tell it wasn't nothing. I started looking over my shoulder too. I was relieved when we finally got on board and found seats together in the back of the bus. We stored our backpacks. Annabeth kept slapping her Yankees cap nervously against her thighs. And the last passengers got in. Annabeth clamped her hand onto my knee. Percy. An old lady had just boarded the bus. She wore a crumpled velvet dress, lace gloves, and shapeless orange knit hats. The shadow that shadowed her face. And she carried a big paisley purse. When she tilted her head up, her black eyes glittered, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Mrs. Dodds, older, more withered, but definitely the same evil face. I scrunched down in my seat. Behind her came two more old ladies, one in green hat, one in purple hat. Otherwise, they looked exactly like Mrs. Dodds. Some gnarled hands, paisley handbags, wrinkled velvet dress, triplet demon grandmothers. They sat in the front row, right behind the driver. The two on the aisle crossed her legs over the walkway, making an X. It was casual enough, but it sent clear message. Nobody leaves. The bus pulled out of the station as we headed through the slick streets of Manhattan. She didn't stay that long, I said, trying to keep my voice from quivering. I thought you said they could dispel for a lifetime. I said if you were lucky, Annabeth said. You're obviously not lucky. All three of them, Grover whimpered. The mortals. It's okay, Annabeth said, obviously thinking hard. The Furies, the three worst monsters from the underworlds. No problem, no problem. We'll just slip out of the windows. They don't open, Grover moaned. The back exit? She suggested. There wasn't one. Even if there had been, it wouldn't have helped. By the time we were on Ninth Avenue, heading for the Lincoln Tunnel, they won't attack us with witness around, I said. Will they? Mortals don't have good eyes, Annabeth reminded me. Their brains could only process what they see through the mist. They'll see three old ladies killing us, won't they? She thought about it. Hard to say, but we can't count on mortals for help. Maybe an emergency exit in the roof? We hit the Lincoln Tunnel and the bus went dark except for the running lights down the aisle. It was eerily quiet with the sound of the train. Mrs. Dodds got up in a flat voice as if she had rehearsed it. She announced to the whole bus, I need to use the restroom. So do I, the second sister said. So do I, the third sister. They all started coming down the aisle. I've got it, Annabeth said. Percy, take my hat. What? You're the one they want. Turn invisible and go up the aisle. Let them pass you. Maybe you can get to the front and get away. But you guys, there's an outside chance. They might not notice us, Annabeth said. You're the son of the one of big three. Your smell might be overpowering. I can't just leave you. Don't worry about us, Grover said. Go. My hands trembled. I felt like a coward, but I took the Yankees cap and put it on. When I looked back, my body wasn't there anymore. I started creeping up the aisle. I managed to get up 10 rows, then duck into an empty seat just as the Furies walked past. Mrs. Dodd stopped sniffing and looked straight at me. My heart was pounding. Apparently, she didn't see anything. She and her sisters kept going. I was free. I made it to the front of the bus. We were almost to the Lincoln Tunnel now. I was about to press the emergency stop button when I heard hideous wailing from the back row. The old ladies were not old ladies anymore. Their faces were still the same. I guess they couldn't get any uglier. But their bodies had shriveled into leathery brown hag bodies with bat wings and hands and feet like gargoyle claws. Their handbags had turned into fiery whips. The Furies surrounded Grover and Annabeth, lashing their whips, hissing, Where is it? Where? The other people on the bus were screaming, cowering in their seats. They saw something, all right. He's not here, Annabeth yelled. He's gone. The Furies raised their whips. Annabeth drew her bronze knife. Grover grabbed a tin can from his snack bag, and prepared to throw it. What I did next was impulsive and dangerous. I should have been named ADHD Poster Child of the Year. The bus driver was distracted, trying to see what was going in the rearview mirror. Still invisible. I grabbed the wheel from him and jerked it to the left. Everybody howled as they were thrown to the right. I heard what I hoped was the sound of the three Furies smashing against the windows. Hey! The driver yelled. Hey! Whoa! We wrestled for the wheel. The bus slammed against the side. Against the side of the tunnel, grinding metal, throwing sparks a mile behind us. We carried out of Lincoln tunnel and back into the rainstorm. People and monsters tossed around the bus, cars plowed like aside like bowling pins. Somehow the driver found an exit. We shot off the highway through half a dozen traffic lights and ended up barreling down one of those New Jersey rural roads where you can't believe there's so much nothing right across the river from New York. There were wood there were woods to our left, the Hudson River to our right, and the river seemed to be veering towards the river. Another great idea. I hit the emergency brake. The bus wailed, spun a full circle on the wet asphalt, and crashed into the trees. The emergency lights came on. The door flew open. The bus driver was the first one out, the passengers yelling as they stamped after him. I stepped into the driver's seat and let them pass. The Furies regained their balance. They slashed their whips at Annabeth while she waved her knife and yelled in ancient Greek, telling them to back off. Grover threw tin cans. I looked at the open door. I was free to go, but I couldn't leave my friends. I took off the invisible cap. Hey! The Furies turned, bearing their yellow fangs at me, and the exit suddenly seemed like an excellent idea. Mrs. Dodds stalked up the aisle just as she used to do in the class, about to deliver me my math test. Every time she flicked her whip, red flames danced along the barbed leather. Her two ugly sisters hopped on top of the seats on either side of her, crawled towards me like huge nasty lizards. Percy Jackson, Mrs. Dodd said in an accent that was definitely from somewhere farther than Georgia. You have offered the gods. You shall die. I liked you better as a math teacher, I told her. She growled. Annabeth and Grover moved up behind the Furies, cautiously looking for an opening. I took the ballpoint pen out of my pocket and uncaped it. Riptide elongated into a shimmering double-edged sword. The Furies hesitated. Mrs. Dodds had felt Riptide's babe before. She obviously didn't like seeing it again. Submit now, she hissed, and you will not suffer eternal torment. Nice try, I told her. Percy, look out! Annabeth cried. Mrs. Dodds lashed a whip around my sword hand, like the Furies on either side lunged at me. My hand felt like it was wrapped in molten lead, but I managed not to drop Riptide. I struck the Fury on the left with its hilt and sending her toppling backwards in the seat. I turned and sliced the Furies on the right. As soon as the blade connected with her neck, she screamed and exploded into dust. Annabeth caught Mrs. Dodds in a wrestler's hold and yanked her backwards while Grover ripped the whip out of her hands. Ow! He yelled. Ow! Hot! Hot! Ow! The Fury I had held slammed came to me again, talons ready, but I swung Riptide and she broke open like a piñata. Mrs. Dodds was trying to get Annabeth off her back. She kicked, clawed, hissed, and bit, but Annabeth held on while Grover got Mrs. Dodds' legs tied up in her own whip. Finally, they both shoved her backwards into the aisle. Mrs. Dodds tried to get up, but she didn't have the room to flap her bat wings, so she kept falling down. Zeus will destroy you, she promised. Hades will have your soul. Bracus mis vesimini, I yelled. I wasn't sure where the Latin came from. I think it meant eat my pants. Thunder shook the bus. The hair rose on the back of my neck. Get out! Annabeth yelled at me. Now! I didn't need any encouragement. We rushed outside and found the other passengers wandering around in daze, arguing with the driver or running around in circles yelling, We're going to die! A Hawaiian shirted tourist with camera snapped my photograph before I could recap my sword. Our bags, Grover realized. We left our boom! The windows of the bus exploded. The passengers ran for cover. Lightning shredded the huge crater in the roof, but an angry wail from inside told me Mrs. Dodds was not dead yet. Run! Annabeth said. She's calling for reinforcements. We have to get out of here. We plunged into the woods as the rain poured down, the bus in flames behind us, and nothing but darkness ahead. Chapter 11. We visit the garden gnome emporium. In a way, it's nice to know there are Greek gods out there because you have somebody to blame when things go wrong. For instance, when you're walking away from a bus that's just been attacked by monsters, hags, and blown up by lightning, and it's raining on top of everything else, most people think that just really bad luck. When you are a half blood, you understand that some divine force really is trying to mess up your day. So there we were, Annabeth and Grover and I, walking through the woods alone, along the New Jersey riverbank, the glow of New York City making the night sky yellow behind us, and the smell of the Hudson reeking in our noses. Grover was shivering and braying, his big goat eyes turned split pupil and full of terror. Three kindly ones, all three at once. I was pretty much in shock myself. The explosion of bus window still rang in my ears, but Annabeth kept pulling us along, saying, "Come on, the farther away we get, the better." All our money was back there, I reminded her. Our food and clothes, everything. Well, maybe if you hadn't decided to jump into the fight, what did you want me to do? Let you get killed? You didn't need to protect me, Percy. I would have been fine. Sliced like a sandwich bread, Grover put in, but fine. Shut up, goat boy, said Annabeth. Grover brayed mournfully. Tin cans, a perfectly good bag of tin cans. We sloshed across mushy ground, through nasty twisted trees, and smelled like sour laundry. After a few minutes, Annabeth fell into line next to me. Look, her voice faltered. I appreciate you coming back for us, okay? That was really brave. We are a team, right? She was silent for a few more steps. It's just that if you had died, aside from the fact that it would really suck for you, it would mean the quest was over, which may be my only chance to see the real world. The thunderstorm had finally let up. The city glow faded behind us, leaving us in almost total darkness. I couldn't see anything of Annabeth except a glint of her blonde hair. You haven't left Camp Half-Blood since you were 7, I asked her. No, only short field trips. My dad, the history professor? Yeah, it didn't work out for me living at home. I mean, Camp Half-Blood is my home. She was rushing her words out now, as if she were afraid somebody might try to stop her. At the, at the camp, you train and train, and that's all cool and everything. But the real world is where the monsters are, and where you learn whether you are any good or not. If I didn't know better, I could have sworn I heard doubts in her voice. You're pretty good with that knife, I said. You think so? Anybody who can piggyback ride a fury is okay by me. I couldn't really see, but I thought she might have smiled. You know, she said, maybe I should tell you. Something funny back on the bus. Whatever she wanted to say was interrupted by a shrill tut tut tut, like the sound of an owl being tortured. Hey, my reed pipes still work, Grover cried. If I could just remember a fine path song, we could get out of this woods. He puffed with a few notes, but the tune still sounded suspiciously like Hilary Duff. Instead of finding a path, I immediately slammed into a tree and got a nice sized knot on my head. Add to the list of superpowers, I did not have infrared vision. After tripping and cursing and generally feeling miserable for another mile or so, I started to see light up ahead, the colors of neon sign. I could smell food, fried, greasy, excellent food. I realized I hadn't eaten anything unhealthy since I had arrived at Half-Blood Hill, where we lived on grapes, bread, cheese, and extra lean cut, nymph prepared barbecue. This boy needed double cheeseburger. We kept walking until I saw a deserted two-lane road through the trees. On the other side was a closed down gas station, a tattered billboard for a 1999 1990s movie, and one open business, which was the source of the neon light and the good smell. It wasn't a fast food restaurant like I'd hoped. It was one of those weird roadside curio shops that sell law flamingos, lawn flamingos, and wooden Indians, and cement grizzly bears, and stuff like that. The main building was long, low warehouse, surrounded by acres of statuary. The neon sign above the gate was impossible for me to read because if there's anything worse for my dyslexia than regular English is red cursive neon English. To me, it looked like at new Mesgnod Gnomperium. What the heck does that say? I asked. I don't know. I don't know, Annabeth said. She loved reading so much. I'd forgotten she was dyslexic too. Grover translated. Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium. Flanking the entrance, as advertised, were two cement garden gnomes, ugly, bearded little runts, smiling, waving as if they were about to get pictures taken. I crossed the street, following the smell of the hamburgers. Hey, Tober warned. The lights are on inside, Annabeth said. Maybe it's open. Snack bar, I said wistfully. Snack bar, she agreed. Are you too crazy? Grover said. This place is weird. We ignored him. The front lot was a forest of statues, cement animals, cement children, even a cement satyr playing the pipes, which gave Grover the creeps. Blah, he bleated. Looks like my uncle Ferdinand. We stopped at the warehouse door. Don't knock, Grover pleaded. I smell monsters. Your nose is clogged up from furies, Annabeth told him. All I smell is burgers. Aren't you hungry? Meat, he said scornfully. I'm a vegetarian. You eat cheese enchiladas in aluminium cans, I reminded him. Those are vegetables. Come on. Let's have Let's leave. These statues are looking at me. Then the door creaked open, and standing in front of us was a tall Middle Eastern woman. At least I assumed she was Middle Eastern because she wore a long black gown that covered everything but her hands, and her head was completely veiled. Her eyes glinted behind a curtain of black gauze, but that was about all I could make out. Her coffee colored hand was a grand clever hand looked old, but well manicured and elegant, so I imagined she was a grandmother who was once been a beautiful lady. Her accent sounded vaguely Middle Eastern too. She said, Children, it's too late to be out all alone. Where are your parents? They are, Annabeth started to say. We are orphans, I said. Orphans? The woman said. The word sounded alien in her mouth. But my dears, surely not. We got separated from our caravan, I said. Our circus caravan. The ringmaster told us to meet him at the gas station if he got lost. But he may have forgotten, or maybe he meant a different gas station. Anyway, we had lost. Is that food I smell? Oh, my dears, the woman said. You must come in. Poor children. I'm Auntie M. Go straight to the back of the warehouse. There is a dining area. We thanked her and went inside. Annabeth muttered to me, Circus caravan? Always have a strategy, right? Your head is full of kelp. The warehouse was filled with more statues. People in all different poses, wearing all different outfits with different expressions on their faces. I was thinking you'd have to have a pretty huge garden to fit even one of those statues because they were all life size. But mostly I was thinking about food. Go ahead, call me an idiot for walking into a strange lady's shop like that just because I was hungry. But I do impulsive stuff sometimes. Perhaps you have never smelled Auntie M's burgers. The aroma was like laughing gas in dentist's chair. It made everything else go away. I barely noticed Grover's nervous whimpers or the way the statue's eyes seemed to follow me, or the fact that Auntie M had locked the door behind us. All I cared was finding the dining area, and sure enough, there it was, back of the warehouse, a fast food counter with a grill, a soda fountain, a pretzel heater, and a macho cheese dispenser. Everything you could want, plus a few steel picnic tables out front. Please sit down, Auntie said. Awesome, I said. Grover said reluctantly. We don't have any money, ma'am. Before I could jab him in the ribs, Auntie M said, No, no, children, no money. That is a special case, yes? It is my treat for such nice orphans. Thank you, ma'am, Annabeth said. Auntie M stiffened as if Annabeth had done something wrong, but then the woman relaxed just as quickly, so I figured it must have been my imagination. Quite all right, Annabeth. You could have You have such beautiful grey eyes, child. Only later did I wonder how she knew Annabeth's name, even though we had never introduced ourselves. Our host disappeared behind the snack counter. Before we knew it, she bought us plastic trays heaped with double cheeseburgers, vanilla shakes, and extra large serving of French fries. It was halfway through my burger before I remembered to breathe. Annabeth slurped her shake. Grover picked at the fries and eyed the tray's waxed paper line as if he might go for that, but he still looked too nervous to eat. What's that hissing noise? He said. I listened but didn't hear anything. Annabeth shook her head. Hissing? Auntie M asked. Perhaps you hear the deep fryer oil. You have keen ears, Grover. I take vitamins for my ears. That's admirable, she said. But please, relax. Auntie M ate nothing. She hadn't taken off her headdress even to cook, and now she sat forward and interlaced her fingers and watched us eat. It was a little unsettling having someone stare at me when I couldn't see her face, but I was feeling satisfied after my burger and a little sleepy, and I figured the least I could do was try to make small talk with our hostess. So, you sell gnomes? I said, and trying to sound interested. Oh, yes, Auntie M said. And animals, and people. Anything for the garden. Custom orders, statuary is very popular, you know. A lot of business on this road? Not so much, no. Since the highway was built, most cars, they do not go this way now. I must cherish every customer I get. My neck tingled as if somebody else was looking at me. I turned back. It was a statue of a young girl holding an Easter basket. The detail was incredible, much better than you see in most garden statues. But something was wrong with her face. It looked like as if she had startled or even terrified. Ah, Auntie M said sadly. You notice some of my creations. Did not turn on well. They are made. They do not sell. The fact is the face is the hardest to get right. Always the face. You make these statues yourself? I asked. Oh yes. Once upon a time, I had two sisters to help me in the business. But they have passed on, and Auntie M is alone. I've only my statues. This is why I make them. You see, they are my company. The sadness in her voice sounded so deep and so real that I couldn't help feeling sorry for her. Annabeth had stopped eating. Annabeth had stopped eating. She sat forward and asked, Two sisters? It's a terrible story, Auntie M said. Not one of not one for children, really. You see, Annabeth, a bad woman was jealous of me long ago when I was young. I had a boyfriend, and this bad woman was determined to break us apart. She caused a terrible accident. My sisters stayed by me. They shared my bad fortune as long as they could, but eventually they passed on. They faded away. I alone have survived, but at a price, such a price. I wasn't sure what she meant, but I felt bad for her. My eyelids kept getting heavier, my full stomach making me sleepy. Poor old lady. Who would want to hurt somebody so nice? Percy? Annabeth was shaking me to get my attention. Maybe we should go. I mean, the ringmaster will be waiting. She sounded tensed. I wasn't sure why Grover was eating the wax paper of the tray now, but if Auntie M found this strange, she didn't say anything. Such beautiful grey eyes, Auntie M told Annabeth again. My eyes. It has been a long time since I have seen grey eyes like those. She reached out as if to stroke Annabeth's cheek, but Annabeth stood abruptly. We really should go. Yes, Annabeth swallowed his wax paper and stood up. The ringmaster is waiting, right? I didn't want to leave. I felt full and content. Auntie M was so nice. I want to stay here with a while. Please, dears, Auntie M pleaded. I so rarely get to be with children. Before you go, won't you at least sit for a pose? A pose? Annabeth said wearily. A photograph. I will use it to model a new statue. See, children are so popular, you see. Everyone loves children. Annabeth shifted her weight from foot to foot. I don't think we can, ma'am. Come on, Percy. Sure we can, I said. I was irritated with Annabeth for being so bossy, so rude to an old lady who had just fed us for free. It's just a photo, Annabeth. What's the harm? Yes, Annabeth, the woman purred. No harm. I could tell Annabeth didn't like it, but she allowed Auntie M to lead us back out the front door into the garden of statues. Auntie M directed us to a park bench next to the stone satyr. Now, she said, I'll just position you correctly. The young girl in the middle, I think the two young gentlemen on either side. Not much light for a photo, I remarked. Oh, enough, Auntie M said. Enough for us to see each other, yes? Where's your camera? Grover asked. Auntie M stepped back as if to admire the shot. Now, the face is the most difficult. Can you smile for me? Please, everyone. A large smile. Grover glanced at the cement satyr next to him and mumbled, That sure does look like Uncle Ferdinand. Grover, Auntie M chastised. Look this way, dear. She still had no camera in her hands. Percy, Annabeth said. Some instinct warned me to listen to Annabeth, but I was fighting the sleepy feeling, the comfortable lull that came from the food and the old lady's voice. It will just be a moment, Auntie M said. You know, I can't see you very well in this cursed veil. Percy, something's wrong, Annabeth insisted. Wrong? Auntie M said, reaching up to undo the wrap on her head. Not at all, dear. I have such noble company tonight. What could go wrong? That is Uncle Ferdinand, Grover gasped. Look away from her, Annabeth shouted. She whipped her Yankee's cap onto her head and vanished. Her invisible hand pushed Grover and me both off the bench. I was on the ground looking at Auntie M's sandaled feet. I could hear Grover scrambling off in one direction, Annabeth in another, but I was too dazed to move. Then I heard a strange rasping sound above me. My eyes rose to Auntie M's hand, which had turned gnarled and body, with sharp bronze talons for fingers. I almost looked higher, but somewhere off my left, Annabeth screamed, No, don't! More rasping, the sound of tiny shakes, right above me, from about where Auntie M's head would be. Run! Grover bleated. I heard him racing across the gravel, yelling, Maya! To kickstart his flying sneakers. I shouldn't move. I stared at Auntie M's gnarled claws and tried to fight her groggy trance. The old woman had put me in. Such a pity to destroy a handsome young face, she told me smoothly. Stay with me, Percy. All you have to do is look up. I fought the urge to obey. Instead, I looked to one side and saw one of those glass piers people put in gardens. A grazing ball. I could see Auntie M's dark reflection in the orange glass. Her hairdresser was gone, revealing her face as a shimmering pale circle. Her hair was moving, writhing like serpents. Auntie M. Auntie M. How could I have been so stupid? I told myself. How did Medusa die in the myth? But I couldn't think. Something told me that in the myth, Medusa had been asleep when she was attacked by my namesake Perseus. She wasn't anywhere near asleep now. If she wanted, she could take those talons right now and rake open my face. The grey-eyed one did this to me, Percy, Medusa said, and she didn't sound anything like a monster. Her voice invited me to look up, to sympathize with the poor old grandmother. Annabeth's mother, the cursed Athena, turned me from a beautiful woman into this. Don't listen to her, Annabeth's voice shouted somewhere in the statuary. Run, Percy! Silence, Medusa snarled, a voice modulated back to a comforting purr. You see why I must destroy the girl, Percy? She is my enemy, daughter, my enemy's daughter. I shall crush her statue to dust. But you, dear Percy, you need not to suffer. No, I muttered. I tried to make my legs move. Do you really want to help the gods? Medusa asked. Do you understand what awaits you on this foolish quest, Percy? What will happen if you reach the underworld? Do not be a pawn of the Olympians, my dear. You would be better off a statue. Less pain, less pain. Percy! Behind me, I heard a buzzing sound like a 200-pounded hummingbird in a nosedive. Grover yelled, Duck! I turned, and there he was in the night sky, flying in from 12 o'clock with his winged shoes fluttering. Grover holding a tree branch the size of a basketball bat. His eyes were shut tight. His head twitched from side to side. He was na- from side to he was na- He was navigating at the finally jolt me into action, knowing he was navigating by ears and nose alone. Tuck, he yelled again. I'll get her. That finally jolted me into action, knowing Grover. I was sure he'd miss Medusa and nail me. I dove to one side. Thwack! At first I figured it was the sound of Grover hitting a tree. Then Medusa roared with rage. You miserable satyr, she snarled. I'll add you to my collection. That was for Uncle Ferdinand, Grover yelled back. I scrambled away and hid in the statuary while Grover swooped down for another pass. Gruck! Ah! Medusa yelled, her snake hair hissing and spitting. Right next to me, Annabeth's voice said, Percy! I jumped too high. I jumped so high my feet nearly cleared a garden grove. Geez, don't do that. Annabeth took off her Yankee's cap and became visible. We have to cut her head off. What? Are you crazy? Crazy? Let's get out of here. Medusa is menace. She's evil. I'll kill her myself, but... Annabeth swallowed as if she were about to make a difficult admission. But you've got the better weapon. Besides, I'd never get close to her. She'd slice me into bits because of my mother. You've got a chance. What? I can't. Look, do you want her turning more innocent people into statues? She pointed to a pair of statue lovers, a man and a woman with their arms around each other, turned to stone by the monster. Annabeth grabbed a green gazing ball from a nearby pedestal. A polished shield would be better. She studied this sphere critically. The convexity will cause some distortion. The reflection size would be off by a factor of. Would you speak English? I am. She tossed me the glass ball. Just look at her in the glass. Never look at her directly. Hey guys, Grover yelled somewhere above us. I think she's unconscious. Roar. Maybe not, Grover corrected. He went in for another pass with the tree branch. Hurry, Annabeth told me. Grover's got a great nose, but he'll eventually crash. I took out my pen and uncaped it. The bronze blade of Riptide elongated in my hand. I followed the hiss and spitting sound of Medusa's hair. I kept my hand locked on the gazing ball so I would only glimpse Medusa's reflection, not her the real thing. Then, in that green tinted glass, I saw her. Grover was coming in for another turn at bat, but this time he flew a little low. Medusa grabbed the stick and pulled him, of course. He tumbled through the air and crashed into the arms of a stone grizzly bear with a painful humph. Medusa was about to lunge at him when I yelled, "Hey!" I advanced on her, which wasn't easy, holding a sword and a glass ball. If she charged, I'd have a hard time defending myself. But she let me approach. 20 feet, 10 feet. I could see the reflection of her face now. Surely it wasn't really that ugly. The green swirls of the casing ball must be distorting it, making it look worse. "You wouldn't harm an old woman, Percy," she crooned. "I know you wouldn't." I hesitated, fascinated by the face I saw reflected in the glass, the eyes that seemed to burn straight through the green tint, making my arms go weak. From the cement grizzly, Grover moaned, "Percy, don't listen to her." Medusa cackled. Too late. She lunged at me with her talons. I slashed up with my sword, heard a sickening schluck, then a hiss like wind rushing out of a cavern, the sound of the monster disintegrating. Something fell to the ground next to my foot. I took all my willpower not to look. I could feel warm oozing soaking into my sock, little tiny snake's head tugging at my shoelaces. "Oh, yuck!" Grover said. His eyes were still tightly closed, but I guess he could hear the thing gurgling, steaming. "Mega yuck!" Annabeth came up next to me, her eyes fixed on the sky. She was holding Medusa's black veil. She said, "Don't move." Very, very carefully, without looking down, she knelt and draped the monster's head with a black cloth. Then she picked it up. It was still dripping green juice. "Are you okay?" she asked me, her voice trembling. "Yeah," I decided, though I felt like throwing up my double cheeseburgers. Why didn't the head evaporate? "Once you sever it, it becomes a spoil of war," she said. "Same as your minotaur horn. But don't unwrap the hair. It can still petrify you." Grover moaned as he climbed down from the grizzly statue. He had a big welt on his forehead. His green rasta cap hung from one of his little coat horns, and his fake feet had been knocked off his shoes. The magic sneakers were flying aimlessly around his head. "The Red Baron," I said. "Good job, man." He managed a bashful grin. That really was not fun, though. Well, the hitting her with the stick part, that was fun. But crashing into a concrete beer, not fun. He snatched his shoes out of the air. I recaped my sword. Together, the three of us stumbled back to the warehouse. We found some old plastic grocery bags behind the snack counter and double wrapped Medusa's head. We plopped it on the table where we had eaten dinner and sat around it, too exhausted to speak. Finally, I said, "So, we have Athena to thank for this monster." Annabeth flashed me an irritated look. "Your dad, actually. Don't you remember? Medusa was Poseidon's girlfriend. They decided to meet in my mother's temple. That's why Athena turned her into a monster. Medusa and her two sisters who had helped her get into the temple. They became the three Gorgons. That's why Medusa wanted to slice me up. But she wanted to preserve you as a nice statue. She's still sweet on your dad. You probably remind her of him." My face was burning. "Oh, now it's my fault we met Medusa?" Annabeth straightened in a bad imitation of my voice. She said, "It's just a photo, Annabeth. What's the harm?" "Forget it," I said. "You're impossible. You are insufferable. You are—" "Hey!" Grover interrupted. "You two are giving me a migraine. And satires don't even get migraines. What are we going to do with the head?" I stared at that thing. One little snake was hanging out out of a hole in the plastic. The words printed on the side of the bag said, "We appreciate your business." I was angry not just with Annabeth or her mom, but with all the gods who, for this whole quest, for getting us blown off the road and in two major fights the very first day out from the camp. At any rate, we'd never make it to LA alive, much less the summer solstice. What had Medusa said? "Do not be a pawn of the Olympians, my dear. You should be better off as a statue." I got up. "I'll be back." "Percy," Annabeth called after me. "What are you?" I searched the back of the warehouse until I found Medusa's office. Her account book showed her 6 most recent sales, all shipments to the underworld, to decorate Hades and Persephone's garden. According to one freight bill, the underworld's billing address was DOA Recording Studios, West Hollywood, California. I folded up the bill and stuffed it into my pocket. In the cash register, I found $20, a few golden drachmas, and some packing slips for Hermes Overnight Express, each with a little leather bag attached for coins. I rummaged around the rest of the office until I found the right size box. I went back to the picnic table, packed up Medusa's head, and filled out a delivery slip. The gods, Mount Olympus, 600th floor, Empire State Building, New York, NY. With the best wishes, Percy Jackson. "They're not going to like it," Grover warned. "They'll think you are impertinent." I poured some golden drachmas in the pouch. As soon as I closed it, there was a sound like cash register. The package floated off the table and disappeared with a pop. "I am impertinent," I said. I looked at Annabeth. Annabeth tearing I looked at Annabeth, daring her to criticize. She didn't. She seemed resigned to the fact that I had a major talent for ticking off the gods. "Come on," she muttered. "We need a new plan."